to join us. Those of you who will be participating in public comment today, we do ask if you can please use the raise hand feature if you are joining us via Zoom on the web. That way we can provide an opportunity so you can turn on your webcam and we can actually see the person providing public comment. It will be limited to 3 minutes again during that time, but thank you and welcome, and thank you for joining us today. We should be starting shortly. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's council meeting. Just some quick housekeeping while we wait for a couple of our last council members to join us. Those of you who will be participating in public comment today, we do ask if you can please use the raise hand feature if you are joining us via Zoom on the web. That way we can provide an opportunity so you can turn on your webcam and we can actually see the person providing public comment. It will be limited to 3 minutes again during that time, but thank you and welcome, and thank you for joining us today. We should be starting shortly.
Okay, Mr. City Clerk, looks like we're all here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's council meeting. Just some quick housekeeping while we wait for... That might be from TJ, Mayor. TJ, oh, there we go. He's got it.
Got it. Are we good to go then?
Yes, I believe we are good to go.
All right. I'd like to welcome everyone. Good evening. I would like to call to order the August 11th regular meeting of the Hermosa Beach City Council. If you would all please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, very good. Mr. City Clerk, roll call, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Armato.
Here.
Councilmember DeToy.
Here.
Councilmember Fangari.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Massey.
Here.
And Mayor Campbell.
Here.
And we do have quorum to proceed, Mayor.
Very good, thank you. Mr. City Attorney, will you please deliver the closed session report?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'd like to report that this meeting convened at 5 o'clock this evening. There were no public comments on the closed session agenda. There were no items added to the closed session. There were no reportable actions taken in closed session, and our closed session recessed at about 5:15 this evening. And that's my report. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. City Attorney. Now moving on to announcements. I would like to look to my colleagues to see if they have any announcements this evening. Councilmember Fangari.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to just to provide a quick announcement and a disclosure relating to some of the agenda items that are coming up. As you all know, the city attorney provided an update last meeting regarding the ongoing litigation. Mike and I had a chance to talk briefly on the phone yesterday, and I relate to him. I did not appreciate his repeated references to ethical violations and using the word ethics, I think 6 times in the way he presented the meeting. I thought it was intended to put me in a bad light in front of my constituents, which I did not appreciate. I don't think it should be the place of the city council meetings to throw allegations of ethical violations of the state bar rules in this meeting. And I think both Mike and I agreed that we will try to conduct ourselves in these meetings with a little bit less friction and issues going forward, and I will do that on my end. However, I did want to provide an update because the last update that Mike gave was of 2 weeks ago, and since then we've had a couple of developments. The motion that Mike referred to about getting me ruled as recused of the council has been appealed, and the appeal automatically stays that order. Therefore, I just want to make sure that you are all aware and the public is aware that I'm still counsel of record on the case that is proceeding. I will continue to proceed. Last Friday, the city had 2 motions that were filed. One of the motions, motion to dismiss, was denied. Another motion, which is called the demur, was granted with leave to amend, which basically means we're going to amend the complaint and pursue the litigation. So it's just unfortunate that the city decided to file 3 different motions that I think for the most part, all 3 of them are useless and cost the city about $100,000. The motion to recuse me has been stayed, so essentially completely ineffective. The motion to dismiss was denied, and Demar will just allow us to amend the complaint, which is something that we conceded with the city attorney in March, that we would amend the complaint. They refused to concede, to stipulate to it, filed the motion, and here we are, whatever, 6 months later and $100,000 later with no benefit to the city or the constituents, which is unfortunate. The last thing I'll mention about this is the efficiency of running the case also concerns me and concerns me with the cost. The city's attorney has refused to agree to exchange documents by email, which is something that most attorneys in today's world do. And because of their refusal to do that, they send these 3 motions in literally 6 different FedEx packages to my office. It's just an incredible waste of efficiency and a waste of the city's money. And frankly, for Justin, the environmental guy, a waste of FedEx's truck fuels and airplane fuels. And I just don't get it. I don't understand why a law firm would refuse to allow the other party to exchange documents by email. We do that all the time. We do it every day, and everybody's doing, especially with the virus, obviously. But the law firm refused to do that. It's their policy. They don't allow people to serve documents to them by email. So as council members, and obviously, as you know, I'm recusing myself from any closed sessions regarding this case. But as council members that are not recusing myself, you should have that conversation with the city attorney. Says, why is the law firm opposed to serving documents by email? Because it saves everybody time and money. And if the city attorney's law firm is just charging the city for all the copies that they make on the FedEx package that they sent, you as council members and have the issue of the city, you should ask that question. Why are we doing that? It's a complete waste of time and money, and the city ends up paying for it. So with that background, just to make sure that you guys are aware of it and the public is aware of it as well, I will give you the disclosure now that I plan to recuse myself on 3 matters that are coming up later in the meeting. It's items 6F as in Frank, 6G as in George, 6H as in Hanny. All 3 of them deal with issues that pertain to the existing litigation. And out of concern about potential conflict, I intend to recuse myself from all 3 matters. And Madam Mayor, since these are the 3 matters in item 6, and based on the training that our city attorney provided to us at the last week on Thursday, it's my understanding that once I recuse myself, I had to completely disconnect from the website. So I can't really, I'm not just, according to FPPC rules, I understand it, Mike, that I'm not even supposed to watch the meeting. So I'm going to recuse myself and get out at the time before item F starts. And if it's okay, Madam Mayor, if somebody from staff can call me to let me know when the item H is concluded so that I can log back in, I would appreciate it. That concludes my announcements and my comments. Thank you.
Very good. Any other announcements from my colleagues? Mayor Pro Tem Massey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The preamble to Councilmember Fangary's comments were about keeping the litigation out of our council meetings, and I think that's the best course. There are a number of statements that Councilmember Fangary just made that could be disputed, along with the merits of the litigation that continues to be pursued. This is not the time or place to do that. There are other forums to do that. So I would certainly encourage Councilmember Fangary to use those other forums. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Massey. Anybody else? Councilmember Fangary.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate Justin's comment about encouraging Councilmember Fangary to do it, but no direction to his city attorney to direct and do the same thing. So, it goes for one side, goes for the other. And what I told Mike yesterday when I talked to him is, if you push me, I'm going to respond. I'm not going to take people talking down to me. I'm going to not taking people attacking me. I'm going to respond when I get attacked. So if you have a real serious concern about the allegation not being part of the council, Justin, you should tell your city attorney the same thing you're telling me. You shouldn't be picking sides. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, anybody else with an announcement before? Yes, Mr. City Attorney.
I just want to confirm that Councilmember Fangary and I had a conversation that I initiated yesterday with the intent of trying to reduce the amount of tension in these meetings and avoid unnecessary confrontation. And I reached out to Councilmember Fangary with that intention in mind. And I'm committed to doing that and to avoiding, the kind of confrontations that we saw in the last meeting and some prior. And so with that, I just want to just note in as non-confrontational a way as possible that I completely disagree with Councilmember Fangary's representations of the lawsuit and the status of the lawsuit. I'm not going to use any more time tonight to get into it because I just think it's not productive. But I do continue to have concerns about Councilmember Fangary sitting on the dais as a council member and talking about the lawsuit in which he is an adverse attorney to the city. We do have a ruling from a judge that this is a conflict of interest and a breach of his fiduciary duty as a city council member. The filing of that appeal has no, other than staying that ruling, doesn't erase the fact that we have a judge who has determined that it is inappropriate, unethical, and a breach of fiduciary duty. And that is a fact. And that is something of importance to the community. And with that, I will address other litigation issues at another time when it's more appropriate. Thank you, Mayor.
Understood. All right. I will move on to my announcements.
Madam Mayor, if you don't mind, I just want to follow up and seek clarification in something Councilmember Fangary mentioned, that he was recusing himself on a couple items on our agenda because they relate to the lawsuit, but we received a supplemental. That's not what it says. So if Councilmember Fangary wants to clarify specifically why you're recusing yourself, I would appreciate that.
All right. And sorry if I didn't see your hand. Councilman Fangary, do you care to respond?
I don't understand that question.
I asked if you wanted to clarify based on the supplemental you provided to this agenda as to exactly why you're recusing yourself on the Brown Act complaints.
I did not provide a supplemental to this agenda item. I sent a letter to the mayor and the city attorney a long time ago. The city decided to add a supplemental today. Told me they're adding it as a supplemental today. It wasn't my call to be added as a supplemental. That letter basically provides that my wife joins on the items F and G, and therefore I'm recusing myself. But it's not a supplemental that meant for this agenda item. It was just a part of the ongoing litigation. That letter is sent to my letterhead from my law firm. There's nothing to do with me being a council member. And because 2 items are part of the ongoing litigation, I don't think it's appropriate for me as a council member to participate in the city council's discussions of the cure and correct and what the council is going to decide on it. You have the advice from the attorney, and when these items come up, you're going to vote on it and make whatever decisions you make. And it's not appropriate for me to be part of that discussion.
All right, just in an effort of transparency, I wanted the community to know that, in fact, you're representing Dina Fangary in joining the 2 claims. I just wanted to make that clear. It wasn't earlier.
Couldn't be very clear. I sent the letter, whatever the date is, like a week ago. It could not be clearer, and the city could have posted that as part of the staff report if they wanted to, and frankly, I don't know why they didn't. So it wasn't me not trying to be transparent. The letter has been with the mayor since I sent it. Could have been part of the staff report. You chose not to put it part of the staff report. You chose to post it today. That's your call or city clerk's call, not mine. I had no control over that. I did not request that letter to be added as supplemental today. I've been as transparent as I possibly can, and I resent the implication that I wasn't. When you
Thank
make
you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. All right.
Don't interrupt me again.
I'll move on to my announcements for this evening. Starting with, we are very pleased to see that our city's restaurants and businesses opening their outdoor operations, creating a livelier downtown and making sure that we can continue to serve their customers in a safe manner. The Hermosa Beach Chamber of Commerce is providing an updated list each week of the businesses in Hermosa Beach that have taken the Safe in the South Bay pledge to follow proper protocols, to commit to following proper protocols and slowing the spread of COVID-19 for their employees and their customers. You can see this list at any time on the Chamber's social media. Please do all you can to continue to shop and eat local to help our local businesses during these very challenging times. During the 2020 State of the City address that was presented online this year because of COVID-19, I was privileged to interview just a few of our many local community leaders who have been helping the business community during this pandemic. If you didn't see the virtual presentation of the State of the City address and you would like to do so, you can simply visit the city's website and find it there and replay it at your convenience. As you all know, our city faces many challenges because of COVID-19. One big challenge is getting everyone to answer the 2020 census. This count is critical to so many programs, from the federal funds that our schools receive to the grants that the city is eligible to receive each year, which are often critical to our ability to accomplish several of our important goals. COVID-19 has made the survey even more difficult this year, and the U.S. Census Bureau director announced on August 3rd that the Bureau will end all counting efforts for the 2020 census on September 30th. This is a month sooner than previously announced. Currently, there is only about 64% of Hermosa Beach residents who've responded to the 2020 census. We very strongly encourage all residents to respond to the 2020 census because these numbers are used to determine local funding and political representation for the next decade. More information about the Hermosa Beach's response rate and why the census matters is available on our city's website on the census webpage. The census form is very easy and quick to complete online. This is a very small thing that each of us can do to support our schools, our community, and our city. Also, you may begin to see some people in your neighborhoods who are collecting additional information for the state of California to assist with the accurate population counts. These are data collectors from the RAND Corporation, which is a nonprofit research institute. They are surveying the number of households that have not yet responded to the census and are asking residents to please fill out the short survey. They are not selling anything. The state and RAND assure us that they will be wearing protective gear, keeping 6 feet distance from residents, and they will be wearing vests with the name of the project. California Neighborhoods Count is what it's called, and they will be carrying an identification badge at all times. So the state of California will use this data that they collect to help determine state funding for local programs. So please help us out by getting this done. And if they come to your door and you haven't yet filled it out online, to take the survey. And with that, we thank you in advance. We thank you for your cooperation if you've already done so. We thank you in advance if you participate before the end of the deadline. And with that, that concludes my remarks, and we can move on to the approval of the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So at this time, we ask that the council motion and second to approve tonight's agenda.
Is there a motion to approve? Councilmember Armato moves.
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Choi seconds. Comment? Seeing none, yes, Councilmember Fangari.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am not going to approve the agenda for the same reasons I did not approve the last two, that I think staff reports should be published or should be posted at the same time the agendas are posted 72 hours ahead of time. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment? Seeing none, I'll ask the city clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Armato.
Aye.
Councilmember Detoy.
Aye.
Councilmember Fangari.
Nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Massey.
Aye.
And Mayor Campbell.
Aye.
The agenda is approved by majority consent.
Wonderful. And so we proceed to proclamations and presentations.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tonight we do have a couple of presentations on the agenda, starting with the introduction of Fire Station 100B shift crew. So at this time, I would invite Brandy Villanueva or Madam City Manager Suja Lowenthal to tee us up for their introduction.
Hi, Brandy.
Hi, Mayor Campbell. How are you this evening and council? I just want to start off by saying thank you for allowing us to bring B Shift back. They were here at our last meeting and unfortunately received a call, so they did have to leave. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves just so that you all know they will be taking their mask off so that you guys can see their face when it's their turn to talk. But as you can tell, I have mine on. But they all are sitting here with their masks on. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Captain Thornton.
Okay.
Hi, good evening.
Good
My name
evening.
is Dean Thornton. I am actually the A shift captain over at the Fire Station 100. I have been with LA County Fire for 28 years. I've been over here at Hermosa now for about a year now. As I stated, yeah, I'm on the A shift, working overtime tonight on the B shift. But tonight we have representation from all three shifts over at Fire Station 100. And I'll turn it over now to Engineer Perea.
Thank you.
I'm Engineer Perea on the B shift. I've been working for the County of Los Angeles for 26 years and here in Hermosa for 2.
Hello, Jason Cocaine. I've been with LA County Fire Department for 25 years, paramedic for 20 of those, and I'm on the B shift at Fire Station 100. Been here for Hermosa for 2.5 years when it opened up. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Hello, I'm firefighter Marshall Lott. I'm on the C shift. I've been with Los Angeles County Fire Department for approximately 25 years. I have the distinct pleasure of only being here for only 2 weeks. So I'm the newest member to Hermosa here.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, Council. My name is firefighter Jake Ching. Been on the job 30 years, and I've been here at Hermosa since we opened the station. Having a great time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
And that is all of them for this evening. We'll have our final shift next council meeting, along with our fire station update. Any questions?
No, I really enjoy seeing the people. We haven't seen enough people lately, so appreciate it. And I just want to see if the Madam City Manager has anything that she wants or needs to add to this presentation.
Don't, Madam Mayor, thank you. I just want to share my own gratitude to our firefighters. I know we are looking forward to them moving into the new fire station, and so that's exciting. But it really is exciting to see their faces and be sure that they know that we consider them part of our family. And although some of us are working remotely and we don't see each other as often as we used to, we are still thinking of you and are very grateful for the service that you provide to our community.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you so much. Anybody else have a question for Brandy or? All right, we'll carry on. We understand it's kind of like being there at the station when they get a call and they got to scram. So have a great evening. Unless we're going to see you later. I'm not sure, Brandy. I don't think so. Okay, we can move on to our next presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Next, we have our COVID-19 health update from our Beach Cities Health District. And we have Tom Backley on the line, accompanied by Jacqueline Sun to provide this presentation. Tom, are you there?
Awesome.
I am. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Good to be here tonight. We're going to jump right into the update. Jacqueline's going to talk some numbers, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the survey data that we're getting from the Joint Information Center and kind of what's next as far as messaging.
Fantastic.
Good evening, Mayor Campbell, members of the City Council. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity to provide these updates at your council meetings. As Tom said, I'm here with the state of COVID and the numbers. So unfortunately, this week we've met some really grave milestones in our marathon of this many month-long journey of COVID-19 with over 5 million cases across the US and 10,000 deaths in California. And as you see here, the county cases, we've surpassed 200,000 cases, and just today surpassed 5,000 deaths. Today we reported 63 additional deaths in the county and 1,440 additional cases. And that 1,440 additional cases includes missing lab reports from one of the larger labs. And it's a little indicative of some of the data issues we've been experiencing in the past couple of weeks, which unfortunately do not allow us to paint a full picture of where we are, but we are continuing on with some cautious optimism. As you see here, we have some of the issues with the state electronic lab reporting system, which have been amounting to an undercount, and we're expecting all that data to be reconciled this week, and the county is going to do their job in trying their best to reassign those cases to the dates in which they happen, so it's not just one big data dump and a huge number that we're seeing. But we are seeing some other metrics improve and stabilize, which is why we're cautiously hopeful. While the case count and the positivity rate are influenced by this potential backlog from the state, we are seeing those numbers decline, as well as number of deaths across the county stabilize, which is the number of deaths and the hospitalization rate are not impacted by this lapse in the electronic lab system. So thankfully, our hospitalization numbers are down, and we are reporting that the youngest residents are making up a majority of the cases with the highest case rate among those aged 30 to 49. And I'll take the next slide, please. So you see here, I just wanted to show some of the progress that we're making with hospitalization rates. A few weeks back, we were reporting to you when we were at our peak in mid-July, COVID hospitalization rates across the county over 2,200 per day. So you see this chart that we have on our dashboard tracks the past 3-day average of hospitalizations, and we are definitely in the 1,500 to 1,600 range, which shows quite an improvement, which we are hopeful about. I'll take the next slide. So I apologize in advance about how chaotic this slide looks, more chaotic than what you're used to. This is a different chart that we just added to our dashboard. You're used to seeing the case rate per 100,000, which is a cumulative number of the cases. We added this past 14-day case rate per 100,000 in the South Bay because some of the metrics that the state and the county are tracking are using the same indicator, and we thought that it might be helpful to also see how we are tracking in our beach cities in the South Bay generally. So let me orient you to the many lines and rainbow of colors on this graph. So the black line again is LA County as a whole. The orange line is Inglewood, yellow line is Hawthorne. The light purple line is El Segundo. You have gray is Torrance, Hermosa is green, Manhattan is red, and Redondo is blue. So this past 14-day case count, it allows us to see a more accurate snapshot of how we are doing right now relative to the county, as opposed to more of a cumulative glance of how we are over time. I think these numbers are important because they're used to benchmark some of the what keeps us on the state monitoring list. To get off the state monitoring list, we have to be below 100 cases per 100,000 in the South Bay. You see the black line in LA County, about 350 right now. Another metric to keep aware of is the 200 cases per 100,000, which is for schools who are interested in applying for a waiver to open for in-person learning. That was the kind of threshold for the county. And so obviously the county as a whole and the region is not there yet, but we see the differences as we've seen in the past, the disparities between the county as a whole and our neighbors in Inglewood and Hawthorne versus what we're seeing in the beach cities. And I'd also just add that, when we're getting these questions of, is one place safer than the other? And I think that that's a really tough question, even though you're seeing some of these lower case rates in certain communities, because this is a regional issue. As we know, boundaries and city limits don't really apply to COVID-19. And there are very few of us who only live and are in the city in which we live in. So a lot of people travel for work and travel for other reasons. And so risk is really dependent on a lot of different things, not just where you live, but your level of exposure and as well as your behaviors. So wanted to just interpret this graph with the caution that, though we're tracking the data by city and how we are relative to the county, that this is still a very regional situation that we're in. Next slide, please. This is a chart that you're very familiar with too, where we're just tracking the cases, new cases in the beach cities where every week, so the week of August 2nd through August 8th, you see Hermosa had 13 additional new cases last week. You see some of the trends where, in May and June, relatively low and stable, and this huge spike in July, mid-July, and it seems as though Redondo has pretty big numbers from last week, but just, if we're trending Hermosa, we had those big numbers in the middle of July and a downturn and a little bit of an uptick from the last week. And so I think that, what we're learning is that people really appreciate having this local data to do some kind of evaluation of where we are as a community. So I wanted to turn it over to Tom to give you more of the local data that we're seeing from the Joint Information Center and the survey that we conducted.
Great, thanks, Jacqueline. We can go with the next slide, please. So this, I believe, is the third survey that the Joint Information Center, or JIC, has been doing. As you can see, getting great responses, 1,600 responses from Manhattan Beach, 1,400 from Redondo, and 400 from Hermosa. This is something that Michael and Brandy are also very involved with the Joint Information Center. But we just wanted to share, this is hot off the press. We're still analyzing it. So if there are questions tonight, we may need to come back or work with Brandy and Michael and Suja on it. But just wanted to give you this. This is the first time I think that we've publicly shared it. And so you can see that older people are filling it out more than other age groups. You see 65 plus there with the number of answers. So it is, it seems slightly, pointed towards older age groups, but you can see that there's fairly even distribution, but then we drop off, the 25 to 34 and below, not seeing a lot of responses there. So that's something to keep in mind as we look at these, what we're hearing from the community. So we just want to be clear about who's filling out the survey. Next slide, please. So you can see the question, how worried are you about the impact of COVID on you personally? So there's obviously worry, right? When you add up the first three between extremely and very and somewhat, that's obviously the strong majority there, up over close to 80%. If you add the first two, a little less than half are extremely or very worried about COVID. And so it continues to be on people's mind, obviously. This is a shift that we saw, and we are seeing a shift from the second survey, when the first one that was done by the JIC looks similar to this in many ways. And then as we've talked about, this is a push and pull between health and worry and the economy. And we're back sort of on the edge of worry and health in the results of this survey. Next. So the top three biggest challenges you are currently facing, number one at 58% was frustration with community members not following the health guidance. That is the number one response that we're hearing. And these are all results, right, Jacqueline? These are not just Hermosa, these are for the three beach cities.
Correct.
50% general uncertainty about the future is the challenge they're facing. 50% social isolation, lack of places to go, and then general anxiety. And so those four there are kind of grouped towards the top. And then you have a little bit of a drop down to the next issue that's a hot topic, of course, for all of us is what's happening with education, what's happening with schools. You all have obviously been going through openings and closures, and obviously have some decisions tonight about businesses. That's been obviously a very large topic here over the last couple of months, but we're really seeing the question about schools come to the forefront. And so that's on people's minds. And then 15% cited lack of income or work, and then purchasing supplies, traveling, and then childcare. So these are the issues that the respondents are identifying from the three beach cities, with that age caveat that I mentioned earlier. Do you think the coronavirus is a real concern? You know, that's up over 80%. Do you think it's blown out of proportion? That's what, right around 10% being used politically. People think 25, 30% there. And there's some other answers. So it continues to be a real concern for the people surveyed. Your single greatest concern right now for COVID is just general health and well-being is 34%. And then there's the economy there at 25%. We're seeing mental health and happiness starting to come up as an answer. That's one that we think is going to be ongoing. We think that mental health is going to continue to be an issue going into the future, and some are calling it kind of the next pandemic around mental health. So we are seeing that percentage coming up, but you can see that the push and pull there between health and well-being and impact on the economy. And then now you're seeing education starting to come to the forefront. So what resources would you like to see more of from your community? So general reporting COVID statistics. So that's something that we're continuing to try to push out through our communications, through partnering with you, through some of the new graphs that we showed tonight that kind of, we think maybe give a more accurate picture of what's happening over the last 14 days. So that's something we're continuing to work on. So you see that as general reporting. And then information, testing, health officer orders. Again, I think that falls into the general reporting or statistics. Obviously, with having a testing center here in the South Bay that Beach City's Health District is operating with the county, I think is helpful. And that's something that we're going to continue to do as long as the county will partner with us, and also getting information out about testing requirements or what's needed as far as testing, or also information about isolating and quarantining. That continues to be questions that people have. And so we're just going to keep doing what we're doing and keep pushing that information out. So along those lines, we're really taking an approach, and this has been a shift here in the last month where I think all of us were kind of responding to an emergency, obviously with coronavirus. We're going to continue to respond. We're going to continue to meet the needs of the community, and we're shifting to this could be something that's going to be around for a while, and we're going to need to shift our behavior and adapt to. And won't get into the whole question of will it ever go back to normal or what does normal look like, but we're starting to push out information about what we need to do to manage our lives with COVID in it, because we see that happening in the foreseeable future. And so we've talked a lot about this being something that our behavior impacts. I don't know how to say it any other way. And so really having people understand that if you want to get back to beach volleyball, then you need to wear a mask. That's the single most thing, other than staying at home or isolating, which impacts a lot of things, the economy, mental health. If we're not prepared to do that, then the mask is the best way to get back to beach volleyball or what you want. And we're really working with the community that, yes, this is something that's happening to us, but we can also influence it. And the degree to which it's happening to us is influenced by our behavior. And Hermosa's had a lot of trade-off discussions in the past and a lot of sort of personal accountability discussions in the past. So I think Hermosa understands this well. And this is a message that you all have supported with your recent action. And we applaud you for that. And we have confidence that our community will continue to step up and make the right decision to protect themselves and their families and their friends and get back to the way of life that we all enjoy here. Always want to put up our assistance and referral line. It's 310-374-3426, extension 256. We're open 7 days a week. 8:30 to 5. If anybody has any questions about anything related to COVID, whether it's testing or meals or errands or policies regarding isolation and quarantine, we urge people to call us. We have people that are staffing that phone and able to answer those questions. If for whatever reason we're not there, or you get somebody gets a recording, we will respond back, and we urge people to reach out, and we're here to help, and we're in this together. One of the things that we're looking to do as a health district, and again, this is sort of hot off the press, is that we want to do a town hall, and it'll be in 2 weeks, and it really is going to be focused around what I was discussing about living with COVID. I know we've shared lots of information about sort of responding to the emergency. This town hall is going to take a little bit of a different shift and move more towards living with COVID, and what does that look like, especially as it relates to mental health. We really think that it's going to be a major issue for the community as we move forward. So we wanted to let you know of that time. There'll be more to come. We're literally first time announcing it just now. And I did tell my board members, so some of you trained me well on that. And but you are the first to hear. So.
Does that mean we're your favorite?
Yeah, don't tell the other cities.
Awesome. Thank you both once again. It's really comforting to have you both here with so much tangible information, and you feel like family, obviously, to us. And I want to see if my colleagues have any questions or comments for our Beach Cities partners. Mayor Pro Tem Massey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, Tom. Tom, I had a quick clarifying question for you. Several slides back, you showed the graph where over 80% of the Beach Cities population who responded said that COVID-19 is a real concern. And then it was closer to 12% who said it wasn't a concern. I just wanted to clarify, I looked at the map. Am I right that the respondents could choose any of the 4 options? They weren't required to just choose one. They could choose as many as they wanted. And so, for example, people could say that it was a real concern and that it was being used for political purposes.
Correct. That's correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Tom.
I think that's why you saw that one maybe spike up a little bit. Yeah. But they could choose more than one.
Right. All right. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Yes, Councilmember Armato.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just quickly want to let Jacqueline and Tom and the whole team at Beach Cities Health District know that we so appreciate the work you've been doing for a long time, but especially now, keeping our community informed and being dedicated and coming to each of our meetings and ensuring there's that transparency through this COVID pandemic. We're just so grateful. So thank you very much.
Councilmember DeToy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Tom and Jacqueline, for the presentation. Again, that 14-day running chart is a great new chart and somewhat encouraging for the future, and also for the schools opening up, and hopefully we can get LA County on board with how well the South Bay is doing. I know we talked about this last week, but right before this meeting, slightly before 5, we got an email from Supervisor Hahn talking about the rental assistance. Supervisors approved $100 million, part of the CARES Act money, and starting next Monday, the 17th, they'll start reviewing applications. So 211la.org. So hopefully the city can also put that on our social media, because I know that we had a few public comment about it as well. So just thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember DeToy. I just wanted to add a couple things. I happened to be watching the news this morning, and I was looking really quickly to see if I could recall which university. I think it was a university who did the study on the quality and the effectiveness of face covering, since that's such a huge part of us continuing to stay the course and bring the numbers down. The best 3 were the N95s, the regular, very common surgical masks, and at least double, if not multiple layer cloth face covering. And they had a lot of negative feedback for some of the other options that people are using, including bandanas and the gaiters that are very popular. They still said something is better than nothing. Absolutely, absolutely. But I think that's going to be a little bit more of an evolution of the awareness about face coverings, which are going to be critically important. I want to just reiterate something I've been sharing all week. After last week's briefings, I heard separately the leading expert in the nation working for the federal government, Dr. Fauci, and our own LA County, Dr. Ferrer, each separately had shared, we do not have to go back to a full lockdown to get this done. Based on what they're seeing. But what we do need is everyone to participate in the solution. If we start getting off message and wiggly around the details, that's when we are going to risk our schools reopening, our businesses surviving and being able to come back after all of this. And so it could not be more important. We're getting some traction to have everyone participate in the solution, whether you feel vulnerable or not. Helping to keep others from getting sick has the ripple effects that make all the difference. So, and there was some some interesting news about some possible vaccines. So even if we're thinking about bridging ourselves to an eventual effective vaccine that's widely available, that's at least a clear goal that we can all hopefully get behind and feel aligned on for all the right reasons. And so, I just agree with our partners about mental health. It's not only going to be, but it already is a very serious challenge for many, many people. So that's all I wanted to add. Any final comments? All right, well, thank you guys for staying on your message. We really appreciate you and invite you to stay around or to go on with your evening. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Get out of this full screen. So, Mr. City Clerk, I think that's it for presentations, correct?
That is correct, Madam Mayor. So that would take us to miscellaneous items and reports by Madam City Manager Suja Lowenthal. And with your permission to turn over the floor to Suja.
Yes, absolutely. Suja, please proceed with your updates. Oh, I'm sorry. I just saw Councilmember DeJoy's hand.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just one question on the last segment for Eddie. On the agenda, it says the PowerPoints were updated, but there was no information there. So just so the public could access it later.
Understood, Councilmember DeJoy. I'll check to see if the supplemental slides were there as an attachment. And if not, I'll get those posted immediately. Thank you for that.
Perfect. Thank you.
I see them, but might have to refresh in order to get them up on your screen. Okay, but they should be viewable by the public. So, and they're great slides. Okay, and now, Madam City Manager, please provide your updates tonight.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I wanted to wish everyone a good evening. I'd like to start off with our farmers market and share some good news. We are pleased to announce that another one of Hermosa Beach's traditions is returning. The Friday Farmers Market at 11th Street and Valley Drive will resume from noon to 4 p.m. on Friday. The Rotary Club, which hosts the Friday Farmers Market, had closed the market in response to COVID-19 restrictions. The Rotary Club has since brought on a new market manager and has worked with Los Angeles County to reopen safely and in compliance with LA County's public health order and protocols for operating a farmers market. Please see the Friday Farmers Market Facebook page for more information. And along those lines, I thought it would be a good time to provide an update on the city's organic waste program. I am happy to share that we are on track to implement residential organic waste service beginning September 1st. Residential customers will receive outreach materials in their September billing, detailing what materials are allowed to be discarded with this program. These materials will include a notice in Athens' quarterly newsletter and a trifold brochure specific to the organics program. Customers will utilize their existing green cards for this service. There will be no charge to the equipment, nor no change to the equipment, nor the service days. We will be utilizing the city's other media as well, website, social media, and other opportunities to share the word, to spread the word about this program. Outreach will be ongoing and reflect contamination monitoring information gathered by Athens Services. As a reminder, organic service is free for commercial customers, and residential customers pay approximately $5 per month for a 64-gallon organic screen cart. Organic service is currently voluntary for residential customers, and approximately 20% of residential customers do subscribe to this service. Commercial customers will also be receiving educational materials regarding organic service in September. The city implemented citywide organic service in September 2019 and has been focusing on the commercial service in response to deadlines mandated by CalRecycle for commercial customers to be compliant by 2019. This new organics program, approved by the City Council on September 10th, 2019, included rate increases to all customers, with residential rates increasing approximately 30 cents per month. The delay in the implementation of the residential program is a result of the focus on commercial customer compliance. The pandemic has also caused delays in achieving effective implementation, with resources both at the city and state levels being diverted during this time. Staff is still working toward full compliance of commercial customers and is preparing for upcoming organics mandates that will affect all customers. We are in regular communication with CalRecycle regarding implementation and have submitted a formal plan for compliance detailing our efforts. The organics program approved by Council in 2019 positions the city well for compliance with these upcoming regulations, and staff is working with Athens Services to implement the programs necessary for this. And thank you for your indulgence, Madam Mayor. I know that was a long update, but it's a program that's been a long time in the making, and I know a lot of folks have been very curious and interested in what the status is. I'd like to continue on with an update regarding our COVID-19 efforts. In Hermosa Beach, I'm sorry to share that we are continuing to see new confirmed cases of COVID-19, as you heard from our partners at Beach Cities Health District. Our city continues to have the highest rate of total cases per 100,000 among the beach cities. This council has recognized the continued spread of the virus in our community with the adoption of an urgency ordinance at its meeting on July 28th. The urgency ordinance requires people to wear face coverings at all times in the most crowded parts of the city. That includes downtown, Pier Plaza, the Strand, and all city parks and the beach when out of the water. These are places where it is often impossible to reliably maintain the 6 feet of physical distance from others who aren't members of your household that is required by public health orders. The city's urgency ordinance imposes administrative fines for violations, which are $100 for the first offense, $200 for a second offense, and $500 for subsequent offenses within a 12-month period. As the council directed, the city hired health enforcement officers from a private consulting firm who began working on Saturday. They are patrolling the crowded parts of town where the urgency ordinance requires face masks at all times. In response to questions we've received, please know that the goal of this program is to get more people to wear face coverings, especially in the parts of town where it is hard for people to reliably maintain the 6 feet physical distance from people who are not members of their household. To accomplish this goal, the health enforcement officers are patrolling the downtown, the Strand, Greenbelt, and the parks. In these parts of town, they are approaching people who are not wearing face coverings to remind them that they must wear one. If the person doesn't have a mask, the officer will provide one. People who refuse to wear a mask may be cited. Over this past weekend, the health enforcement officers were quite busy. They contacted approximately 600 people and distributed about 150 masks. Most individuals who were contacted had a mask with them and put them on. They issued 8 citations with $100 fines on Saturday and Sunday. Anecdotally, we had several observers comment that they saw more people wearing face coverings after the enforcement officers began patrolling. 2 health enforcement officers are working on weekdays and 4 on weekends. We may adjust this staffing in the future. The cost of these staff members is $65 per hour. Our contract with the consulting firm is not to exceed $125,000. With 7 days of service, which is what we are currently providing, The cost is $10,400 per 7-day period. Limiting that service to weekends only would be $4,150 for both Saturday and Sunday staffing. We do not expect income from citations to cover the cost of enforcement. Instead, the city is seeking reimbursement from the state government for all expenses related to COVID-19 expenditures, including the cost of hiring additional personnel to enforce face mask requirements. The city also conducted extensive outreach to educate the public about the new requirements. You may have seen the new signs that went up and the extensive media coverage over the weekend about the urgency ordinance's requirements and the hiring of additional personnel. I do want to share that as quickly as these signs do go up, it is very frustrating that we have individuals tearing down the signs and vandalizing them and leaving them discarded. So we are finding ourselves going through a significant expense in replacing these signs and looking for different opportunities to post the signage where it is helpful for folks to know what's expected when they come into these areas, but also to try to place them in locations that may be less likely to incur the vandalism. I would like to thank the police department, especially Peter Alstrom and Sochi Tapan, for all of their work to bring the enforcement officers on board so quickly to enforce these requirements. For our residents and visitors, we ask that you please adhere to our city's ordinance and wear your face coverings whenever you are in downtown, in our parks, and on Pier Plaza, the Strand, the Greenbelt, or the beach. Also, please follow the public health orders by wearing face coverings anywhere else in public where you cannot maintain that 6 feet of physical distance from non-household members. As our sign says, wearing is caring, so please show that you care for our community and the health of your loved ones by wearing a face covering in public. With that, Madam Mayor, that concludes my report.
Great, thank you so much for that. Look to my colleagues to see if they have questions for the city manager. Well, people may be thinking, I just wanted to add that there was an awful lot of coverage over the weekend by the news, various formats. And so I was pleased to see that. I think we were pleased to see that just to kind of help spread the word. It was obvious when I was down there on Saturday, the first day of enforcement, there was quite a few people being engaged by these new code enforcement professionals that I noticed pulled a mask out of their pocket. But, you know, I think getting the word out was equally important for this first weekend. And so hopefully we had some help doing that. And people are getting squared away on that requirement.
And Madam Mayor, we will have an update directly from Chief LeBaron as well as Community Development Director Ken Robertson during the update item later on the agenda. So council members will have another opportunity to dive a little bit deeper into the program.
Great. All right. So if that concludes your update, we can move on. Mr. City Attorney, we're at public participation.
Sorry,
Thank you, Madam.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, if you don't mind. We had a question from a member of the public on whether or not we could update the community on short-term vacation rentals in light of the recent decision in Manhattan Beach. So I don't know if Madam City Manager or Mr. City Attorney, if it's an appropriate time to address it.
Yeah, I forwarded the same question as well. I'm not sure. Was that for you, Mr. City Attorney, whether or not it's appropriate to?
Sure, I can do that. Just take a moment. The the decision in the Manhattan Beach case is a trial court level decision. What that means that it's applicable only to Manhattan Beach. And it has no application outside of Manhattan Beach. Consequently, it has no current effect on the city of Hermosa Beach, Hermosa Beach's short-term vacation rental ordinance, and Hermosa Beach's enforcement of its short-term vacation rental ordinance. There are some factual differences between what happened in Manhattan Beach and what happened historically in Hermosa Beach. Some of those differences may be significant in terms of the ultimate outcome of this case. At this point, I don't know if the city of Manhattan Beach intends to appeal that decision. If it does, it's possible there could be a different outcome. It's also possible that if that appeal resulted in a published decision, there could be that decision, that case could have broader impact than just in Manhattan Beach. I think it's fair to say that the law in this area is evolving. It's not static, and it hasn't stopped since we obtained our favorable decision upholding our short-term vacation rental ordinance. And it's difficult for me to say in what direction it's likely to evolve, but it is evolving. And there are a number of pending cases in the court system that could ultimately at some point change the law in a way that would affect our ability to enforce our ordinance. So appreciate being asked. That's the status of that case right now. And I'll report to you any new developments as they arise. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for that update. Now I believe, Mr. City Clerk, we can move on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That takes us to public participation. So the City Council values your comments. The Brown Act generally prohibits the council from taking action on any matter not listed on the posted agenda. Each speaker will have 3 minutes, and we remind all participants that the council does not engage in direct dialogue during public comment. We are going to try something a little different tonight, and we ask that those who are hoping to participate in public comment tonight, please use the raise hand feature for Zoom, and I will go ahead and promote you to panelists so we can allow you to turn your camera on and we can see the public speaker. Again, all we ask is that you please state your name for the record prior to beginning your 3-minute comment. And if you are joining us by phone, you would have to dial *6. It does appear a majority of our attendees are joining us by internet connection, so we hope to be able to utilize that camera feature as much as we can tonight. We have no one listed, Mayor Campbell, my apologies, for this section of public comment. We do have some speakers that are listed for later this evening.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for making it available to put someone on a public comment potentially on video. I just wanted to clarify, and maybe I missed it if you said it, that of course it's optional. It's correct. Person can stay with their video off and just their voice on if they prefer.
Yes, Mayor Campbell, thank you for mentioning that. It is an optional feature. If you'd like to turn your camera on, I will still share my screen so you can see the 3-minute timer, but we will be able to see the speaker if they so choose to turn their camera on. And I believe we have Ashley Toll, who raised her hand, and I've just promoted to panelist. So Ashley, if you're there.
Ashley, are you there?
Yes. Hi, how are you?
Good evening. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. And I just wanted to talk about Mr. Fangari and the way that he has represented himself as a council member to our city. And I think today was a pretty prime example of the way that he has recused himself from half of the agenda because he's suing the city, costing us, the taxpayers, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then turning it around and blaming it on council. Also, just the condescending attitude that Mr. Fangari has had towards the other city council members, it's very off-putting to me as a resident. And it's hard to say that I'm okay with the way that Mr. Fangari is representing our city. I think it's appalling the way that he has been rude. Watching him on the council meetings, I tune in every council meeting and I try to participate as much as I can. And he is always looking bored, uninterested. Today, in fact, you can see the reflection of his computer screen in his glasses, and you can see that he's not paying attention to the meeting. He's simply looking at his email, which is reflected in his glasses. It's very upsetting. It feels like maybe the city's a little bit too much of a burden on him, and maybe he shouldn't be a council member. And I have plenty to say that could take up this whole 3 minutes, but I think that you're getting to my point. And I just want to end that I never hear you say anything positive, Mr. Fangari. And positivity is contagious, sir. And to be a good resident of Hermosa Beach and a good council member that represents the city, you should represent a positive attitude and a positive outlook and hope for our city. And instead, you use your time to bash other council members that are representing the city with pride and honor, and who I see in the street with their face masks on, being friendly and helping other their constituents, while all I see you doing is complaining about the city that you're chosen to represent. And it's very off-putting, and it's frankly just disgusting behavior. And I hope that this maybe will help you to see what you're doing, and maybe you'll correct that behavior. If not, you are an elected official. And as a resident of Hermosa, I'm ready to fight to get you out of this council if you can't represent the council in the manner that they deserve to be represented, which is a respectful and courteous way. Thank you for your time. I hope I didn't speak too fast, but if you have any follow-up questions for me, you know how to reach me. I've actually reached out to Mr. Fangari 3 times and he does not respond to me. So maybe calling him out publicly will help me a little bit with that. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you for being here tonight. And now I'm going to just ask if there, Mr. City Clerk, if there's, I could not see the timer, by the way, Eddie, just might have been.
Thank you for pointing that out, Madam Mayor. So we do see that when I do have the timer up, I was hoping when I share the screen, you can still see the speaker as well, but apparently only the timer comes up. So what I'll be doing is running the timer in the background and with an alarm. So the alarm will chime off after the 3 minutes have concluded.
Okay, great. Great. We're experimenting with our technology here. All right. So I will ask if there's anybody else on the line who's here to provide public comment. Now would be a chance to press *6 on your phone or raise your hand. I'm sorry, Mr. City Clerk said you could push the raise hand button at the bottom.
And if you happen not to know the technology, just let us know. And once you make yourself known, I should be able to switch over to panelists. So.
Sure. And for anyone who doesn't know how to raise your hand, you just push the participants, all of them will appear, and there's a little button at the lower right that says raise hand. So.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, is anybody, any other public comment this evening? Now's your opportunity before we close public comment to raise your hand electronically. I'm hearing no one, seeing no hands. I will go ahead and close public comment and we will proceed with our agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That takes us to item, well, let me make sure I start off correctly. We have no oral written communications that were submitted by the deadline. We did receive a number of supplemental emails and e-comments which have been added to the agenda. So that would take us to item number 2, consent calendar. And at this time, it would be appropriate for any council members wishing to pull any items from the consent calendar to do so, or go ahead and make a motion to approve the consent calendar as is.
All right, would anybody, I see Council Member Fangari's hand.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to pull item 2F as in Fangari.
Okay, 2F. Would anybody like to pull any other items from the consent calendar? Seeing no one, do I have a motion for the balance, to approve the balance? Councilmember Armato, is there a second? I'll second. Any final comments? Seeing none, I will ask the city clerk to call the vote.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Armato.
Aye.
Councilmember DeToy.
Aye.
Councilmember Fangari.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Massey.
Aye.
And Mayor Campbell.
Aye.
The balance of the consent calendar is approved by unanimous consent with the exception of item 2F, which has been pulled by Councilmember Fangari.
Very good. Thank you. And we move on. We have no consent ordinances, so
Yes, that would take us to the items removed. Item 4, items removed from the consent calendar. Again, removed by Councilmember Fangari. Item 2F, and this is the request to renew the Crossing Guard Services Agreement. And Chief of Police Paula Barron is available for any questions.
all right, very good. Do we start with the chief or do we start with the reason for pulling it?
Madam Mayor, we're
Madam
happy
Mayor.
to provide, oh, sorry, go ahead.
It says up to you, Madam Mayor. It's up to you.
Yeah, I was just looking if there was any preference. Chief, would you like to give us a rundown on this?
Madam Mayor, if it's okay, I would like to bring Peter Alstrom on. He is overseeing this contract and he can speak specifically to it, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have of me.
Absolutely, thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, you sound good.
Great. Thank you very much. So this particular item is a request for Council to approve the 5th Amendment to the existing agreement for crossing guard services that the city has with American Guard Services. This particular amendment would carry the services through the end of the fiscal year, so through June 30th of 2021. At this time, the concern was that given the significant amount of uncertainty related to school scheduling, that it would be in the best interest of the community and the community's children to ensure that we had a service provider that was familiar with the city, that had staff readily available, and had established a rapport with the parents and the children and the school staff that they had been serving for these past several years. So the contractor has agreed to extend the contract for an additional year at a rate that was established last year, as well as provide 14 guards when school does resume for in-person instruction. So with that, I welcome any questions.
I'll give the floor to Councilmember Fangari, who pulled this item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Chief and Peter, for that update. I think the reason why I pulled this item, when I look at the contract and look at sections 1 and 2 of the contract, there's nothing in the contract that tells me when this contract starts. And it's my understanding that if the schools are not open, that we don't need guards at this point. And I understand it'd be good for us to have somebody lined up to start, but there's nothing in the contract that tells me that we are authorizing this contract based on a future request that the city would request the guards to work. You know, paragraph 1 or section 1 says the agreement shall commence upon execution. And section 2 says that the city agrees to reimburse for the cost starting from July 1st, which is, 40 days ago or so. So I'm just kind of not very clear to me of how this contract applies today if we are not using the guards today and we have no idea when we're going to need them, because there's nothing in the contract that says that. The contract is, starts effective whenever it's signed, requires the city to pay back costs starting from July 1st of this year until June of next year. But there's no provision that I can see, unless I'm missing it, that says that this contract is only effective when we ask the company to actually show up on the streets to provide the service. It's it's a very brief contract, obviously only 2 pages, but the terms that I mentioned just doesn't provide that the city has the ability to tell the company when to start, and appears to automatically, commit the city to reimburse costs starting from July 1st of this year.
Madam Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
Initiate the response to that. So typically with our professional services, we ask for council approval for a not to exceed amount, and the term is often from the start of the fiscal year to the end of the fiscal year, with options to renew. So similarly here, we would not be paying out on anything until there actually was a service provided, and we would initiate when that service term is based on when the schools will be open in person. And so there will be no charges backdated to July 1. The contract is simply active from that time period. So any service that's provided within that fiscal year is something that we would receive an invoice for. And so we are not obligated to pay this amount unless there actually was a single day of service. If we go through this new school year with 0 days of in-person instruction, there will be $0 expended.
Okay, thank you, Suja. I appreciate that. But I only have the amendment here, so I don't know what the other existing contracts say, but is there some provision in there that says they're only supposed to provide the services when we ask them to go out there, and what times that we're supposed to tell them? And again, this is a very brief contract, so to me, it's vague as to what our obligations are. But if the details are provided in the original contract or some of the previous amendments that basically say you're only supposed to provide services when the city tells you this future date of when you're supposed to start, then I'm fine with it. I was just concerned that the agreement just doesn't give me that certainty, and it may open up the city for liability. It says basically said, you tell us you're going to pay us, and we have people out there Monday through Friday, and you need to pay us.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, I believe that page 2, item 2 would reference that we only pay when they work, or what hours that they work.
No, I understand this, but it doesn't say when we tell them to work, I guess. And that's the vagueness part that I'm concerned about.
Perhaps I can help Councilmember Fangari with this. You're indeed correct that the original contract is not included in the agenda, only the amendment. This contract has been amended a number of times, but paragraph 2.3 indicates that the city determines the hours and locations when and where the guards will be furnished by the contractor.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
All right. Well, and since it's pulled, I had a conversation as well with Madam City Manager about this, and I just wanted to reiterate that it's very important that these crossing guards, preferably the ones that are familiar with our school districts, the actual intersections that they are protecting our children, and ready to go if and when. I recall when we made a switch to a different company not too long ago, there was some interesting concerns raised about how important to the safety of our children coming and going from school that they had quite a few professionals who've been with the city, whether or not they work for one company or another, for many, many years, watching our children grow up. So that was just since it's pulled, I wanted to reiterate that if we get to a point where that we can resume some in-person instruction and crossing guards are needed, that this company would be at the ready to step into our city and do their job. So in case any parents out there are wondering.
Madam Mayor, on that, if I may, I'll make a motion that the City Council authorize the City Manager to renew the crossing guard services agreement with American Guard Services.
Thank you, Council Member. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Council Member DeToy. Final comments?
Just a question, Madam Mayor. I don't know if we need to open it up for public comment. I just can't remember on consent items.
Thank you for that. Mr. City Attorney, on this? Go ahead.
Yeah, you should open it up for public comment. That's a good point. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, great. Thank you. Councilmember Armato, I will now open this item up for public comment, and in the event there's anyone on the line who would like to speak to this item. Now would be your opportunity to raise your hand electronically in the box that shows all the participants. In the lower right hand, you see a button. I'm looking and I see no hands. Okay. All right, last opportunity for public comment on this item, item 2F. Hearing and seeing no one, I'll go ahead and close public comment. And if there are no further comments, I will call for the vote.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Armato,
Aye.
Councilmember DeToy,
Aye.
Councilmember Fangari,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Massey,
Aye.
and Mayor Campbell.
Aye.
The item passes by unanimous consent.
Okay, and we can move on to item number 5, which we have none this evening.
Correct, Madam Mayor. So that takes us into item 6, municipal matters, starting with 6A. So 6A is to receive a report on emergency enforcement measures to ensure compliance with pandemic-related health orders from both the city and the county of Los Angeles Health Department. And we have City Manager, Madam Suja Lowenthal, providing this report.
Thank you, Mr. City Clerk. Madam Mayor, members of the council, I just wanted to introduce this item briefly. I shared in the city manager's updates details about the health order enforcement officers that we brought on board this weekend. We have the written update regarding the different enforcement activities taking place related to the health order. We provided a supplemental update, and I do want to share with members of the council and members of the public that because we are in a state of emergency and a pandemic that I don't think is unknown to anyone, we do have occasion where we will have to provide the most updated information as a supplement to the item. To the extent possible that I can actually avoid that and make that report available at the time that the agenda is posted, I absolutely will. But I know it is your expectation and my obligation to ensure that we as staff provide the most current information related to our efforts to help with enforcement of these health orders and our efforts in the state of emergency that we're in. And that's why we had a supplemental that was posted today, or actually late last night. So with that, I'd like to introduce Chief Paul LeBaron from our police department, as well as Community Development Director Ken Robertson, to provide the oral report for this item. And if we can start with Chief LeBaron, that would be great.
Thank you very much, Madam City Manager, and Madam Mayor, members of the council. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight regarding the ongoing emergency enforcement measures to ensure compliance with the pandemic-related health orders. A lot's already been said, so a lot of it might be a recap or a little bit more detail, but I am happy to talk to you about what we've done since the last council meeting. And as always, I want to thank each of you for your support of the police department throughout this pandemic and the challenges that we're dealing with. Always knowing we can count on you to give us the tools we need to make a difference. So over the past 2 weeks, Hermosa Beach has seen an increase in visitors to the city, and in particular in the beach and the parks. The police department noted a busier than usual workload related just to our public safety measures, not to mention the health enforcement. Notwithstanding, our city manager's office, along with all the city departments, have been working as a team to diligently keep the city safe during the pandemic. We've already mentioned, but I want to just repeat that some of the areas we've emphasized to raise awareness and do what we can to help people understand the seriousness of COVID is we've used social media and public information messaging to inform the public of current city, county, and state orders. We've used various media sources, including print, radio, and television, to publicize the laws and the enforcement strategies in Hermosa Beach. Signs have been posted throughout the city to raise awareness. And we have, at the police department, reallocated some of our staffing to provide additional personnel during the daytime hours. They've been assigned specifically to the beach to focus on large gatherings and quality of life violations that include social distancing and mask wearing. We have also, as was mentioned, onboarded some health enforcement officers that are deployed throughout the city 7 days a week right now, with a goal of raising awareness and gaining compliance to the face covering requirements in Hermosa Beach. I do want to just take a moment and inform you and the public of some excellent work being done by our police department. And in particular, over the last 2 weekends, they have been very busy with the summer crowds and the things that go on just on a normal day. The police department staff has been focusing on the large groups, the egregious violations where the virus is most likely to spread. The consistent enforcement was challenging. The ability to consistently enforce has been challenging due to general calls for service being reported that require our staff's attention. Over the past 2 weekends, the police department responded to 580 calls for service. That resulted in 64 police reports, 22 arrests, and 14 citations. And on top of that, officers conducted 53 traffic stops based on officer observations. And although the primary focus of the police department has been public safety over the last 2 weeks, the enforcement of COVID-related orders was also emphasized. Officers issued 12 citations, and these are not mask citations. These are citations for primarily alcohol-related offenses, and the majority were connected to groups who failed to comply with social distancing orders. So officers were able to get in there and really send a message to them as to how they need to behave during this pandemic. And as mentioned by City Manager Lowenthal, the health order enforcement officers assisted in this effort this past Saturday and Sunday by contacting approximately 600 people, handing out about 150 masks, and issuing 8 administrative citations for failing to wear face coverings. I know just yesterday, Monday, which is a much slower day, they contacted over 200 people based on the initial report that we received. So the use of the health order enforcement officers will continue every day this week through the upcoming weekend, and then we will reassess the deployment strategies after the weekend and make recommendations as appropriate. That is the conclusion of the report for the police department, and I'd like to turn it over to Ken Robertson to update on his staff's efforts.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and thanks for the opportunity. As we kind of broke it out in the report, we are obviously working directly with the police department on a lot of these issues, supporting all the efforts related to enforcing the issue of groups and mask wearing in the parks and the beach. But also the staff report broke out the section about enforcing the orders for physical distancing at restaurants and other businesses. And that's truly my code enforcement officer's focus. So we continue to monitor compliance with all applicable laws, including pandemic-related orders, which is obviously a new challenge for us, but we are getting very well versed in those orders. We have verbally reported to you recent efforts have focused on the alcohol serving establishments. And we actually haven't had a chance to talk about our July 4th multi-jurisdictional approach, where we actually teamed up with the county health inspectors and visited over 100 establishments on that weekend. In keeping up with the numbers, our code enforcement team of 2 individuals, we average about 100 site visits on weekends to continue that monitoring of those businesses. Consistent with what the chief said, we do continue to emphasize education and assistance to ensure compliance. We do get to a stage of writing warning notices as the next step. At this time, warnings about compliance issues have been corrected in a timely manner, and no business has had multiple violations that have led to any citations being written. That said, we are tracking the number of contacts and warning citations with the intent to issue a citation if a business has 3 or more violations. The next step, is focusing on some other businesses other than the alcohol-related businesses. So we are in direct contact now more frequently with personal care and gym and fitness businesses to help educate and assist them as they seek opportunities to operate outdoors. We've also had to coordinate with the health department in a couple instances where businesses to get them to cease indoor operations. So I think that sums up with where we're at. Again, it's a multi-jurisdictional approach with an emphasis on education and assistance, but we will take very seriously if we're in a state of multiple warning citations, and that could lead to administrative citations.
All right. Is that conclude the updates where you're open for questions?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Unless the chief or Suja had something else to add, but
yeah,
that concludes it.
They're good. I see Mayor Pro Tem's hand.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Community Development Director, you mentioned that there were a couple of businesses with which we had to work with the county health department to get them to cease indoor dining in violation of the health officer orders. If I heard that correctly, could you identify those businesses?
They were actually, I was speaking to the indoor operations of gymnasium and fitness centers and personal care business.
Okay, so we had some.
I don't think, yeah, and I don't know if it's appropriate to identify those businesses in this public forum, but they did correct their violations and have not had a recurrence.
Okay, good. And they were gyms or fitness facilities?
Yeah, one was a fitness facility and one was a personal care business.
Okay, good. And thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Ken.
Other questions for the chief or Ken? Councilmember Armato.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a question related to signage. So I don't know if that's better directed maybe at our city manager, but whomever would like to answer it. It appears that folks in town like the signage. There was some feedback about a little more emphasis maybe on mandatory wearing of masks where designated in town, and that they'd like to see more signage. So I just wanted to chat with you for a second on the possibility of that.
Absolutely. Madam Mayor, members of the council, it's great to get feedback from our community members. I think we've heard from quite a few that appreciate the signs. You've probably also heard from some that may want the language to be a lot more firm. We've taken a common approach that we've seen through Beach Cities Health District, through other cities, to keep the tone very similar to our general public information campaign. Although we are in a pandemic and it is a state of emergency, asking for voluntary compliance first seems the right tone for us to take. I have one of our team members, Leanne Singleton, on as well if there are very specific questions to the signs that you'd like answered.
Yeah, I think, sorry to interrupt. I think the feedback was more that people wanted to see more signage, maybe along the Strand, along the Greenbelt, and even more in the downtown. So I just wanted to ensure that that was happening.
Councilmember Armato, we have ordered additional signage. I think we shared with some folks that the signage that we did put out on the Strand, I can't recall if it was Friday or Saturday, was removed very quickly. So we are ordering more, and I am working on ordering banners as well that are very clear. They're out of grabbing distance, so they're very clear that masks are required in these locations when you're in Hermosa Beach at all times. So you'll see more signage coming later this week and probably next week.
That's terrific. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to add how disappointed I am at how quickly the things we pay for and have our staff install gets removed or destroyed or thrown around like garbage. I've seen it since the very beginning of this pandemic. And I'm not even sure that replacing them is wise unless they're out of reach. I don't know if it's been part of your conversation, but if the over the street large ones are maybe, the best case scenario for making it extremely clear, it just seems like a fruitless effort to keep spending money and putting them out there and having them defaced and ripped and torn down. It's really sad and disappointing.
And Mayor Campbell, we're continuing to look at the challenge we have is that you need a space to affix something to.
Mm-hmm.
And so in places like the plaza, you can walk around and think about everywhere to affix something to is really at the edges. And so it's not as visible. And so we're trying to test some new ways that we might be able to add signage, make sure that it's visible and less destructible, if you will.
Right. And we're challenged in different ways with the space because we are messing with the space and moving sidewalk spaces around to be used differently, et cetera. So, did you have anything more you wanted to add, Leanne, or? I have a very different question. I think it's for the chief, perhaps. Are we getting many calls about house parties? They've been a little more in the news lately, and I know we've had some people trying to host inappropriate gatherings. Once in a while you happen by one, but I was just wondering if we're getting calls on that specifically and or if we've had to respond and break those up, indoor private parties.
Mayor Campbell, I would say that based on the statistics that I've seen, and I referenced specifically the last 2 weekends, that has not been something that has been significant. We are still getting more calls about large groups on the beach. I think they're more visible and also in the park, so people are paying attention to that. House parties, we haven't really had a large number of calls on that. So I will ask my staff to pay attention to that. And if we do see something, I'll make sure to report back in my next report.
Right. All right, any other questions? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Massey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not a question, but since this is just a receive update item, I just wanted to give credit to our city manager, chief of police, community development director, and community resources director. Reading the update, I thought it's terrific work. We're not going to get 100% compliance overnight. We know that, but we have a coordinated strategy. We're working on all of our public spaces. We're working with our added enforcement staff for the mask requirement, as well as our existing enforcement staff. And we're making contact, we're getting compliance, we're citing where necessary. If we keep at it, we will improve compliance, and that's our ultimate goal. So I give you credit, all of you, for putting together this plan and for implementing it. And I encourage you to, continue to persist in implementing the plan. And I'm quite sure that the message will get out there and we'll see compliance rates go up. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I agree, and thank you for that. I was going to say a few things similar, and the only thing I'll add that's different is just that we've got. I think I said it early on in the meeting. We have got to triple down on cooperating to follow these simple rules of keeping our distance and wearing face coverings at all times in these locations and anytime we're around other people. And we will be able to see some light at the end of the tunnel, which we're all at this point quite desperate for. So it's an extremely challenging ongoing problem. And I echo Mayor Pro Tem in my thanks to all the staff, Leanne, Madam City Manager, Chief, all your staff, Peter, who was down there on Saturday with me, doing such a great job. So appreciate everybody staying in the game. Okay, and if that wraps that up, I believe, do we need a motion to receive this update or?
No, I believe we don't, but I'll defer to City Attorney Jenkins. But before we move forward, Mayor, I think opening it up for public comment would be good at this time.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone on the line who would like to provide public comment on this item? Now is your opportunity to raise your hand and or speak up. Looking, I don't see any hands. Call for public comment on this item number 6A. Last call for public comment, and I hear none and I see none. So I will go ahead and close public comment. And I will confirm with the city attorney if there is
A motion to receive and file would be in order, Mayor.
Okay.
So
very
moved,
good.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Armato. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Massey. Mr. City Clerk, could you call the vote?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Armato.
Aye.
Councilmember DeToy.
Aye.
Councilmember Fangari.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Massey.
Aye.
And Mayor Campbell.
Aye.
The motion passes by unanimous consent.
Great. We move on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That takes us to item 6B, the review of the city's parking asset restrictions in light of the ongoing changes to the Los Angeles County Health Order. And again, we have Madam City Manager Suja Lowenthal that will be providing a report.
Thank you, Mr. City Clerk. And with this one, I know that Council at its last meeting authorized us to reopen the parking structure. And so going forward, there is likely not a need to have this as a standing item, but just wanted to provide you with an opportunity to ask questions about the status of our parking assets and how things are going. But if you do not object, I will not have it as a standing item going forward unless there is some need to change.
Are there any questions on this up front for the city manager? Or Peter, who's probably still around on the line? I have a couple quick ones that came up when I was going through this. I had the same thought about probably doesn't need to be a standing item anymore. Can I assume, Peter, the quickest draw on this question, what were the hours before we started changing the meters during this health emergency in lots A and C?
The hours in lots A and C, the structure, were 24 hours.
Oh, okay.
Individuals could purchase up to 24 hours.
Got it. I guess I will admit what occurred to me is whether or not the 3 hour, I remember when we instituted the 3 hour that we were barely reopening the beaches to allow people a comfortable window to get out of their car and go to the beach alone and do some exercise and then go home. And it just occurred to me, I wondered if there is a firm justification at this point in time to maintain that, or talk about whether or not there's anything else that would be worth discussing. So I'll kind of put that out to my colleagues. I don't have like a firm thought. It just struck me this time for the first time that what's the 3 hours doing for us at this point, other than what it was established for originally.
Madam Mayor, would you like to hear about the utilization of the structure?
Yeah, I would definitely like to hear about how it's going. We still have employee permits as well as the public available in lot C. So yeah, is this Peter going to give us kind of the download?
Yeah, so Madam Mayor, the lot has been open now 2 weekends. When I say the lot, I'm referring to the structure. Lot A was, of course, open. The first weekend that the structure was opened, both Saturday and Sunday, it had to be closed at approximately 2 o'clock because of the amount of traffic that was in the structure. That is typical, I know, as most of you know, for a summer weekend there where the entrance is closed to prevent a traffic jam in the lot. Last weekend, it was busy on Saturday, however, it was not closed. That being said, on Sunday, we never believed the occupancy got above 50%. But again, that could be attributed to the amount of news media that was in town on Saturday and perhaps made some people reconsider visiting the downtown area.
Yeah, it wasn't quite as hot inland this past weekend, although it's expected to be this coming weekend. So took note of that.
That is correct.
Any other questions or follow-up for Peter on how that's going? Well, with what I introduced, I would simply say, perhaps Councilmember DeToy and I can revisit that with the Economic Development Committee or seek some feedback, and when staff feels like there's any kind of recommendation, I'm not in any hurry. It just came up since this is an ongoing item. So, all right. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, we can just receive and file this report.
That would be great.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Massey. Is there a second?
No, Madam Mayor, I didn't mean to make
Oh,
a
I'm
motion.
sorry.
I was just going to interject that I believe we should open it up for public comment, as we did with the prior item, and then we can go to a motion.
Oh, okay.
That'd be my recommendation anyway.
Yes, yes. Sorry. I will open this item up for public comment. We're going so fast tonight, it's kind of hard to keep track. I'll open this item up for public comment on our parking assets. If there's anyone on the line who would like to speak to this item, now's your opportunity to speak. You can raise your hand or press *6 if you're on a telephone. See no hands raised. Okay, ask one more time. Is there any public comment this evening for this item? Speak now. Hearing no one and seeing no hands, I will go ahead and close public comment. Mayor Pro Tem Massey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that we receive and file the update on the city's downtown parking assets and authorize the city manager to include further updates on the management of the city's downtown parking assets in her general city manager's report and updates on our pandemic response.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Armato. Is there any further discussion or comment? Seeing none, I will ask the city clerk to call the vote.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Armato.
Aye.
Councilmember DeToy.
Aye.
Councilmember Fangari.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Massey.
Aye.
And Mayor Campbell.
Aye.
Motion passes, or the item passes by unanimous consent.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I have a question for the city attorney, just kind of a point of order. Are we conforming with the Brown Act when we are attending a meeting but our video is off? Or are we encouraged to have our video on? Or does it matter?
Well, I'm not, that's a very interesting question. Certainly one that's unique to our COVID-19 virtual meeting era. I'm not sure it's a Brown Act issue. We talk a lot about the Brown Act here, but not every issue is about the Brown Act. But I don't mean that as a criticism, by the way. I just want to note that. I think the problem that you raise is that if the camera's off, we don't know whether or not a council member is present or not. And so we don't know. The public doesn't know if the council member is in the room, so to speak. When we're meeting in the chambers, it's obvious when a council member gets up and leaves the room, for example, to take a quick restroom break. That's not a violation of the Brown Act. And as long as there's a quorum present, the council can continue its business, even with the absence of the council member. But I think the general discomfort that you may be experiencing is that when council members turn off their camera, we just don't know if they're there, if they're in the room. And that's disconcerting, I suppose, in the sense that we don't know if they're listening to what's going on and are in a position to participate knowledgeably. So we don't have a rule about that. We don't have a local rule. There's no state rule about it. Nobody's come down with any guidelines or best practices. That's something, if you want to direct us to put together, we could, you could do that under other matters, and we could, put something together for you. But it is something I think to be concerned about.
All right, I thank you, Mr. City Attorney. And just a super quick follow-up on that. I'm more concerned that, if I shut my camera off and another council member, if three of us do we actually have a quorum? So if you could just quickly address that so that we know moving forward through our meeting.
If I saw 3 council member cameras off at the same time, I would ask the mayor to stop
Okay.
until the cameras came back on, because I would not know whether or not we had a quorum at that point.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm going to build on that real quickly because sitting and leaning into a screen so that you're properly being seen, it's different than even sitting in the council chair where you can kind of lean back and stretch or stand and stretch, which, we occasionally do. I've been thinking that it would be smart to stand up and stretch a little bit. So it's actually a great point that you raise, and I'm glad that you raised it. And it's an evolving thing. And I actually got a note from a constituent. I want to check in with the city clerk on it. It says if the Zoom screen that's visible to the public, if those who are watching have not been upgraded to a panelist, they're not included as part of the participants, nor can they use the chat function available. So I just want to clarify with Eddie, if people tonight, as we're trying a slightly new format so that people can show their video if they would like when they're providing public comment, can we still have people calling in and pressing *6 as another option?
Yes, we still offer both options, Madam Mayor. At this juncture, we luckily only have web participants, but yes, we definitely want to make sure we give both options or make both options available. And as to the conversation that was going on from other city clerks that I've conferred with, it definitely is best practice when when quorum is no longer viewable or visible on the screen. I'm glad Attorney Michael Jenkins mentioned that. It's definitely part of my duty to make sure that the meeting is paused while we determine and get quorum back.
Great. We are having a teachable moment. All right, great. And with that, I think we can move on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So that takes us to item 6C, consideration of draft concepts for temporary lane closures on Hermosa Ave to facilitate foot traffic and outdoor dining and retail options within the public right-of-way. And we have Environmental Programs Manager Douglas Cross and Environmental Analyst Leanne Singleton to provide the report.
Great, wonderful. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this is, again, a consideration of concepts for temporary lane closures on Hermosa Avenue in response to your direction from the July 14th meeting. Staff is recommending that Council discuss and provide direction on which of any of these concepts would be implemented on a temporary basis to facilitate foot traffic, bicycle travel, and outdoor dining options within the public right-of-way on Hermosa Avenue between 10th and 14th Streets. Secondly, we are recommending a appropriation of $46,000 in capital improvement funds to fund the implementation of a lane reconfiguration and associated work on Hermosa Avenue, including traffic counts done before and after implementation. And then thirdly, authorize the city manager to issue an executive order directing the reconfiguration and determining that the project is categorically exempt under CEQA. So in an executive summary here, we have, as we're all very aware and staff has brought back to you as early as May, for your consideration of temporary outdoor and open space programs to facilitate foot traffic, obviously and help the businesses with dining decks and just in general use of the public right-of-way to assist them during the pandemic. At the July 14th meeting, Council gave staff direction to pursue potential lane closures on Hermosa Avenue and Pier Avenue to help achieve these goals. And so staff has worked with one of our on-call traffic engineer consultants to develop the 3 concepts that we have for you tonight for Hermosa Avenue. And we seek Council's feedback on these concepts. So, and just worth noting, this is only Hermosa Avenue you're seeing tonight. Pure Avenue is still being developed, the concepts, and we should have those early next week. And then we will get them back to you in time. So Eddie, I believe if it's possible to share the concepts, we could run through them briefly, and there's a lot to see on these. So I will just kind of provide a summary. There's 3 concepts, so this is number 1. Again, each of these includes a lane closure in both directions, north and south. It's the second lane, so the lane closest to the curb. The vehicle lane would be closed. With this first concept, this is concept 1, right? Okay. You're seeing diagonal parking, which is a feature of all of these. But in this one, you'll notice the diagonal parking is back in. So it's reverse diagonal parking in a sense. In this one, you have a dedicated class 2 bike lane, which would exist just beyond the diagonal parking. And that would exist on both sides of the street. This has a estimated total parking spot availability of 39 spots. As a comparison, existing right now on this section of Hermosa Avenue, we have, well, we started with 58 parking spots. Right now we're functionally at 46 because of existing dining decks that have been built. And something to note within all these concepts is that as dining decks are built, of course, parking numbers will change. So that's something to keep in mind. So again, this one, lane closures on all the concepts. This one is reverse diagonal parking with a dedicated bike lane just outside of the decks and the parking. Eddie, if you could scroll down to concept 2, and I'll go through these quickly. We can come back and discuss them. Concept 2 here, this is head-in diagonal parking. And in this one, it's still a dedicated bike lane, but the bike lane would run for the most part between the parking and the sidewalk and the curb, and swing out beyond the dining decks where there are dining decks. So you will notice if you look, the bike lane kind of weaves in and out between the parking and the decks. In this illustration, of course, the dining decks, the existing ones are only on the east side of the street. So west side is basically all just parking, which could change, although there aren't a lot of restaurants or anything on the west side. And then moving down to our third concept, Eddie, one more scroll, please. This one is also reverse diagonal back-in parking, but it's at a different angle, which does 2 things. It allows for more parking. So with this concept, and I failed to mention on the second concept, we would retain about 35 parking spots. On this one, we would retain and actually gain a couple spots from existing and have almost 60, well, estimated at 61 parking spots. It's back in parking at a different angle, so it's a little bit wider. And so something to note with the diagonal parking on all these concepts is it at a minimum doubles the depth of potential dining decks or retail decks, any outdoor deck area. So whereas currently with our parallel parking that we have on this section of Hermosa Avenue, we have about 7 feet of width. And if you've noticed the decks that are out there, you can get maybe a table or 2. The first 2 concepts would double that to 14 feet in depth. And then this third concept would go beyond that to 17 feet of depth. But with this layout, there is no dedicated bike route. And instead it would be a sharrow. So the one vehicle travel lane would have a sharrow and would share its movements with bicycles. So there they are. We have a supplement to this item. And so we got these concepts early last week, just in time to share them with the environmental or the Economic Development Committee, sorry, stakeholder group. So they got to weigh in on these with not much advance notice, but we had a good discussion during their meeting about these. Got some feedback there, and then since then, so starting with Thursday or Friday morning, I've been shooting emails to all the kind of concerned and affected parties, all the businesses that we could reach down on Hermosa Avenue, to get as much feedback as we can, and that's captured in the supplementals. So there's a lot of different opinions and thoughts on all those. I would say from the businesses that we heard from, there's an emphasis on this third concept because it maximizes parking. But again, the parking will vary, and there are pros and cons with all these concepts, right? These concepts are from the consultant basically taking the direction we had from council of a possible lane closure, accommodating bikes, and increasing dining deck area, right? So these are the three most rational, feasible designs for that section of Hermosa Avenue. So this, again, each has their pros and cons, but with that, I will open it up to questions unless Leanne would like to pick up all the things I missed.
I don't have anything to add at this point.
Not yet. Right?
Madam Mayor, you're on mute.
No wonder you didn't have any questions. Are there questions for Leanne and Doug? Councilmember Fangari.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for the presentation, Doug. That was really helpful. Going through the staff report real quick. On the first staff report, on the first page, it talks about the discussion regarding Pier Avenue at an upcoming meeting. What is your sense about when you think you'll have the information about Pier Avenue?
We expect the concepts from the consultant, again, early next week.
So you
Monday.
likely to be part of our next council meeting?
Yes, I would believe so. We would like to run it by, the Economic Development Committee again, the stakeholder group, so kind of some of the same people, and expand to the Pier Avenue businesses and get as much feedback as we can and bring it back to you.
Okay, thank you. And I see from the staff report that the direction that we gave was to basically go through Hermosa Avenue from 10th to 14th Street. And as you know, from the various comments that you shared with us, that you got from folks and some of the supplemental documents that we got, some of our business owners are asking us to go to 8th Street instead of 10th Street. And I'd like to get your thoughts and Leanne's thoughts about the feasibility of that and pros and cons, if you can.
Anything's possible. It would certainly add costs. It's a little trickier south of 10th because of driveways. There's more driveways. And I would have to talk to the consultant a bit about what design. I know, talking to him briefly about it, that transition from 2 lanes to 1 lane, takes some thought, whether it's distance or signage or a combination of both. And whether that would happen mid-block or have to extend all the way to 8th to be safer is something that would need to be discussed and analyzed. But yeah, that's my initial feedback on that.
Okay, so just to follow up on that question regarding driveways, I'm looking at, for example, concept 1, I believe. And if you're going down Pier Avenue and making a right on Hermosa Avenue, and there's a driveway there, even though you're taking up that lane, the driveway access is still available, right?
Right.
Okay, so for going south from 10th Street, we can apply something similar to that, you think?
Right. I mean, driveways are are, they don't prevent this. They just add, you know, an obstacle in a sense. Obviously, they limit the parking availability, but, you know, it just creates that. It can create some visibility issues. I know immediately south of 10th, there's 2 quick driveways into underground parking areas, which need a certain amount of visibility. So that would just have to be, you know, accommodated and accounted for. And again, you know, the consultant hasn't looked at this in depth because that wasn't the direction, but it could take a closer look and get some of the finer points of it.
Okay, thank you. And I'm now looking at your concept 2, and it looks like it's very well planned or organized for safety of the bikers if we decide to go with a bike lane. And I'm curious from you and from the council members that are involved in the financial development subcommittee, the input that you received from people that are opposed to the bike lane, why were they opposed to it? I guess looking at the design, it seems like it flows well and it doesn't interfere with any of the businesses or the decks. So what was the pushback about why recommending not having a bike lane?
I mean, from my initial take, looking at concept 3, which was preferred by a number of businesses, concept 3 eliminates the bike lane altogether, and maybe not to spite bicyclists, but because it increases parking. So it provides more parking near the businesses.
But I thought people that liked concept 2 liked it without the bike lane, and that was my question. If you like concept 2, is there a reason why you like it but you don't want the bike lane to be there? Or maybe I'm
well, you know what, I can maybe speak to that. We got a lot of different feedback, as you could imagine, and beyond these concepts. I think there was some confusion on concept 2 that the bike lane would actually run between the dining deck and the sidewalk.
That's
which
right.
which you could see being an issue, right? Yeah,
okay.
so that is not the case. It would swing outside of the decks where they exist.
So the commentary was probably not looking at your specific plans. There's just the general comment that the bike lane might be in the way, but looking at
I mean, yeah, upon initial look, that was the confusion, and I think we've explained that to a lot of the businesses.
And Councilmember Van Gary, if I might, I think the distinction is it's trying to make a choice between head-in parking and reverse-in parking. And so concept 2 is the only one that provides the head-in parking. And I think if you were to do head-in parking with no bike lane, I think the thought is that you would be able to get more parking spaces out of it.
But you wouldn't though, right?
You would be able
parking, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You would be able to adjust the angle of the parking. Essentially, we're working with about 20 feet of space. And so you can adjust the angle of the parking to be reverse angle in concept 3. I guess a theoretical concept 4 would look a lot like concept 3, but just reversing the angle of them so that they were head in. So there would be additional parking opportunity there, potentially.
Right, because just from a safety standpoint, with head-in parking, you cannot have the bike path behind it. That would be a very big no-no, so.
Understood.
Yeah.
All right, that's very helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Right, thank you. Other questions at this point? Councilmember Armato.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple more follow-up questions. I've heard some feedback from residents that Herondo and the reverse angle parking has worked out very well. I have a different opinion on that, and I just wanted to verify that was well vetted, that this would work in our downtown.
You know, I mean, feedback-wise, we've received what we have since we shared the concepts. Speaking with the consultant, you know, this is something that is used frequently in many places. So it's not unprecedented. And can be gotten used to, but again, your local knowledge might be stronger than that. I don't know, you know.
But the specific stakeholders that you reached out to, their opinion on reverse angle parking.
We actually had a lot of people that were for it. They understood the safety component, and the visibility is, you know, is much better than head in. As you're going in, it's roughly equivalent to a parallel park, which you would do anyways under existing conditions. And then, of course, as you leave, you might have a much better view of cars and bikes that would be coming your way. And, you know, as we move down to one lane, presumably things are slowing down a little bit, and it would be easier, you know, to have those pauses as people back into their spots, you know, again, kind of equivalent to a parallel.
Okay. Thank you. And then on just some clarification on the staff report. When we say existing 58 spots, but 46 currently because of the dining decks, and then it goes on to concept 1, 2, and 3, 39 for concept 1. Does that number take into account the removal of the 12 spots, or is that in total, including the 12 spots that have been removed?
It includes the 12 that have been removed.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
There might be a discrepancy, 1 or 2 there, but it's been accounted for.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. And then had a question on the parallel parking stalls on the west side of 11th Street. Are those for rideshare or taxis? Drop off, pick up?
Yeah, we retain those to maintain that and the bus stop that's immediately south of it.
Okay. And
Councilmember Armato, just to clarify on that. So currently the way that space from Pier Avenue to 11th is set up is that there's about 5 or 6 spaces that are green zoned during the day, and they convert to rideshare at 9 p.m. on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And the last 4 spaces remain as those are rideshare or taxi zone at all times. And so we would adopt a similar format, just converting them to an angle.
Great. And just clarifying, I am assuming this is the case, but that we will be able to portion out, 15-minute parking spots throughout the downtown.
Yes. Yes, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. And I didn't see that the Public Works Director reviewed this staff report, but I'm assuming that she did in fact take a peek at this and endorses it.
She is aware of it. At this stage, it's very conceptual. I mean, we've been talking to Public Works all along, but assuming, we get a direction one way or another tonight and choose one and go towards it, there would be a lot of specifics that would be ironed out between now and then, in which case we would work very closely with Public Works on, where there's fire hydrants and other little kind of intricacies of either of these concepts.
Okay. And then I think my last question for right now, can you describe to us the importance or not of having dedicated bike lanes through the downtown?
I'll take a shot at that one.
Yeah, sure. Go for it, Lee.
So there's a couple of factors. Hermosa Avenue is a class 3 bike facility from south to north throughout the entire city. And so having some form of bike facility along here makes sense. That could be in the form of a sharrow, or it could be in the form of a dedicated bike lane. If we are going to narrow from 2 lanes down to 1, if we do that in the form of adding a sharrow to lane 1, you would then be putting both vehicles and bicyclists into the same space. That's not necessarily unsafe, but it can slow vehicles down. And so the idea of adding a bike facility here is one, to help keep the one remaining travel lane dedicated for vehicular travel, and to add a buffer space for anyone that's had a chance to sit at some of the dining decks. I know it can sometimes be uncomfortable when cars do go by very close to those at higher speeds. And so adding up to 4 feet of bike lane space can help to add a little bit more space between the dining deck and the vehicular lane. So those are two of the key concepts in the thought behind adding bike lanes to this facility.
All right, that's terrific. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, council member. Oops, we have a breach. All right, other questions? Councilmember Detoy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My ears perked up when I heard fire hydrant and got me thinking, since it is my career. In option number 3, I just started doing the Google Drive along Hermosa Avenue looking for hydrants, and it looks like a lot of those spots would be taken up to have the proper spacing for fire hydrants on the corners. So it almost seemed like we'd lose some of those increases in parking. So it'd be interesting, again, have that look with Public Works to really see what would be gained or lost with all of these proposals. I did have one question as far as ADA parking. I know we don't have much or any street ADA parking. Is there any plans to increase that with any of these plans, as well as does face in or reverse in parking recommended for handicap parking for street parking?
I don't have a great answer for that. I will say, and that's something we can, I mean, Leanne, unless you have something to say, I would think our consultant can certainly guide us with that as we get towards, again, the final product.
Certainly, and I'll add, the reasonable accommodation for ADA accessible spaces we have directly adjacent within our 11th Street parking lot, as well as I believe Lot B and the parking structure all have ADA accessible spaces that have the ramp. If there's direction to ensure that there are ADA spaces added to this, I believe it can be done, just recognizing that there's additional spacing needed to make those ADA accessible spaces. And as I understand it, folks with an ADA placard are able to park at permitted space at metered spaces, and I believe not pay the meter. So it essentially functions as an ADA space for those with placards. So there's a couple different ways that we can go about that.
And worth noting is that this is presumably all temporary, for at least through January, right?
Wonderful. Thank you for the clarification. I know, Doug, you mentioned the update on Pier coming next week. So excited about seeing that as in totality, like all in total. So the $46,000, that would just be for the Hermosa Avenue section. Is that correct?
Yes.
And is any one of the plans more cost effective or cheaper than the rest that would require less restriping or K-rails?
Not significantly. And it's worth noting also that the city's role in these will be almost entirely just striping and signage. We are not placing water barriers for the businesses or as necessary to achieve these reconfigurations. So.
And then just kind of going off what Councilmember Fangari said about going down to 8th. I know I look back in the minutes and the direction was from 10th to 14th. So you did what we were directed you to, but in hindsight now, with 8th being safe route to school, brand new sidewalks, major arterial to PCH, and there are some restaurants midway down the street. It would be interesting to see if at least we could get it stretched halfway down, how that transition maybe from 9th, I know there's not a 9th there, to the 8th intersection, just to help out some of the restaurants we do have there. I know that we have some vacancies as we go further south, but would be supportive of that moving forward. And that's it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Detoy. Any other questions at this point? I have a couple quick ones. I wanted to clarify that the existing build outs, if they got double the size or whatever, got additional room, they would, in theory, take their existing K-rails, et cetera, and just bump them out and then fill in the partitions that, how would that?
Yeah, presumably, yes, they would, keep the existing width or frontage of their spots and just expand them. So yes, move the barriers outward and fill in that gap with additional deck space. Is how I would envision that.
When we had such a variety of different kinds of input and opinions on all this, I didn't see a lot related to what came up in my mind, which is we have all heard plenty about how much these build outs have cost the businesses, and even though they're getting some support here and there. So I'd be particularly interested in whether or not our businesses are really clear about these new concepts and options as we try to come to some direction. And I have some thoughts on that I'll save for after public comment, but I do have a question as well about the staff report said something about January 23rd, did it not? And I think that our, if you will, outdoor dining was mid-January. I can't remember if it was the same date or not. It seemed like it was about a week earlier. Was there any explanation for why January 23rd was specifically chosen as a target for this pilot?
Mayor Campbell, if it was noted and it was different from what the authorization that council has provided related to the outdoor dining, it's probably a typo. If it meant to say January 13, I think was maybe the date.
Yeah, that rings a bell, actually.
The thought would be to match this program in conjunction with the outdoor dining retail activities.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for that. And thank you for the estimates on the timelines of what it would take. My last couple of questions are kind of from a looking forward perspective. And it's if we moved forward with any of these, if you've gotten that far and you're thinking, how would we use this experiment to capture learnings and insights? Would it just be sort of like the typical, we'd put into place an ongoing, kind of feedback system and community involvement opportunities at whatever point to assess how this is going, what the impacts are, what the temperature is for any of these things, translating into something that is potentially a little more permanent than something that's happening inside of a public health emergency. It's certainly everybody's talking about these things. And also we know that it's part and parcel to things represented in our long-term master plan. So, and I say that with this question, of these three concepts, in staff's opinion, do any of the three of them lend themselves more or less to being helpful to future possibilities, or not?
Madam Mayor, I think in staff discussing what the goals that council had laid out for us, we certainly looked at all of these options and measured them across the goals you've identified for us. I think over time, not just related during this time when businesses are compelled to do their business outdoors, but just in general times, you've always prioritized multimodal use of the streets. You've prioritized trying to afford access to the various modes of travel. And so when we look at that, I do think that we as staff walk away and looking at possibly option one as meeting more of the goals you've laid out. And to your earlier question or comment about long-term lessons learned, anytime we do a temporary project or a pilot project, we are seeking feedback from users of the various assets that have been created, businesses, residents, and this would be an opportunity for us to gather that information and make any adjustments and future recommendations to you.
Great. I know we're putting one foot in front of the other at the moment, but I just wanted to bring that back in because that would be part and parcel to it, an opportunity here inside of that, which I think has been raised. Enough time.
Mayor Campbell, if I might, just noting that we've also requested as part of the funding for this to do pre and post traffic counts. And I just want to note that what we would be looking at is not just traffic counts along Hermosa Avenue pre and post, but in some of the side streets and other corresponding streets. And I believe, if I recall correctly, Doug, that the count data we were looking at was to look at 8th Street, Pier Avenue, 27th Street, Hermosa Avenue, Manhattan Avenue. So making sure that we're capturing how does this temporary experiment capture travel changes, both for vehicles as well as pedestrians and bike counts along those corridors, so that we can get a better understanding pre and post what this looks like.
Great. I appreciate that. And that's helpful to know, to have your comment, Madam City Manager, about the different three options. So they're not necessarily all equal in the eyes of some of these other considerations. So I appreciate that. All right, I will hold my other comments till after public comment. Any other questions before we go to public comment? Okay, I'm seeing none. So why don't we go ahead and open this up for public comment? I know we have at least one.
That's correct, Madam Mayor. We do have Jacqueline Sun, who is signed up to kick this off for our public comment. So Jacqueline, if you are there, you can go ahead and begin your comment.
Welcome back.
There I go. Good evening again, Jacqueline Sun from Beach Cities Health District. Thank you for this opportunity to comment on this item. We've long at the district enjoyed our partnership with the city of Hermosa Beach, and we're really pleased to serve on the economic development stakeholder group, where we got a chance to preview some of these plans last week. And it's really exciting. I think it's an exciting opportunity to not only create the space that people need to be safe and physically distanced, but also support the businesses who are really struggling during this pandemic. And so the health district has long partnered with the city to create these built environment enhancements that not only promote economic vitality, but also create this sense of place, or what we call placemaking, that obviously promotes health and safety and community resilience and builds community. And I think that really appreciate, Mayor Campbell, your comments about being future thinking and seeing this as an opportunity, because as this pandemic rages on, it really is an opportunity to kind of try new things. And we appreciate your leadership in being nimble and being responsive to the needs of the business community. And so with that, I think that, we at the district want to support option one, that has the dedicated bike lane and the reverse angle parking, as well as obviously the additional space for outdoor dining and retail. While I think reverse angle parking might be a novel idea for some, it really is, as Doug and Leanne mentioned, a best practice in terms of enhancing safety on a corridor like this, and for on-street parking, just because of the visibility that it creates when people are exiting the parking spot. but also the ability for people when they're opening their car doors to step onto the curbside instead of the street side. So this is something that is best practice in terms of living street concepts across the country. So just want to give a plug for trying to create some extra safety with that. And as Doug mentioned, not much different maneuvering than parallel parking. Obviously with the bike lanes with Hermosa Avenue, I think that, in the past 6 months, there's been such a dramatic change in the way that we move around and get places. And so many more people are walking in the community and so many more families are biking to get places. And the way that we view transportation, I think, has fundamentally shifted. And so I think creating that infrastructure and that opportunity for people who want to utilize this bike infrastructure to get places safely and enjoy places in Hermosa safely, I think is a really big asset and a great opportunity, as you said, to try something new, measure it, get some insights, have it as a learning opportunity, and be really future thinking in this opportunity. So appreciate the opportunity to provide some comments, appreciate your leadership and vision to not only support the businesses, but really, really live out the vision of Hermosa Beach in terms of being a safe, vibrant, and healthy place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Okay. So I'm going to ask if there's anybody on the call who would like to provide public comment. Please raise your hand.
I believe we do have David Grethen who has his hand raised. David, let me go ahead and switch over to panelists so you can provide your comment and turn your camera on if you wish. David, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi, David. We can hear you.
Okay. I don't know how we, well, we'll leave it at that. Yeah, David Grathan. As you know, I'm a Public Works Commissioner. And yes, let's look at this both in terms of how we're supporting businesses during COVID, but let's also recognize the importance of this as a pilot program for a living street. We've talked about doing something like this on various scales throughout the city. This is good that given that some are for, some are against, we got to give it a shot and let's start incrementally, and this is the place. So I think we need to give as much consideration to doing this as a good, highly representative approach for a living street, as well as trying to add some substantial capability for our businesses to expand. So I think we do need balance between both of those objectives. So with that in mind, I would say that we should retain the bike lane. And just speaking as an individual, I'd be willing to give the reverse angle a shot. I do sometimes park down there on Gerando, and it does take some getting used to, but it is manageable, and I can appreciate the visibility benefits with that. So I'd say keep a bike lane, and I would be gravitating towards option one. So let's take the opportunity and see what we learn from this baby step in trying this out. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, David. Okay, you said we had another hand up. I think it was maybe Brian Cooley.
I believe you're right, Mayor. It looks like they've now put their hand down, but if you're there and would like to make a public comment, this would be the time to do so.
All right, either Brian Cooley or anybody else on the line would like to provide public comment. You can raise your hand or press *6.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, this is Don Thomas, and just looking at the three options there, my concern was with one lane of traffic, providing traffic for the vehicles and all of the dense parking, as well as either a Sharrow or a bike lane adjacent. Is there a concern that there's going to be excessive vehicle exhaust for all the diners that are dining right next to the street? It seems like there might be some pretty bad traffic backup with all that going on.
Unfortunately, the council is not able to interact in a dialogue at this point, but you can continue making your public comment and it will be noted.
Okay, that's all I really wanted to point out. I noticed that. I could just imagine with back in spots or even head on, if there's only one lane traveling north and south, you might get traffic backed up for most of the day. And you have all those diners that are going to be just inhaling all that exhaust. Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else who would like to provide public comment on this item? Now is your opportunity. You can either raise your virtual hand.
Hello,
Yes, welcome.
I'm here.
Please state your name.
Mr. Seaman.
Hi, Mr. Seaman.
Yes. How you doing? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay. Yes. Well, I applaud the council for trying to come up with different ideas to perpetuate businesses. However, I don't think that that cutting down the traffic to one lane, which everybody knows is going to be a huge bottleneck as we reopen this city and other businesses and cities, they'll be backed up for miles with one lane at Deer Avenue. This seems to be a never reoccurring quest by your environmental department to do everything they can to get this accomplished, to wipe out one lane on Hermosa Avenue. And as far as the test, it's probably just going to be one day, well, we're going to leave it and make it everywhere. As far as the bike lane, I don't see bikes on Hermosa Avenue for 4 blocks. The bikes have the Strand and there's other streets. They're licensed vehicles and they can go on a street and they don't need an additional bike lane. Also, the thought of the carbon dioxide to the tourists and the diners in the outdoor area, which I think, by the way, right now looks very well. It's functioning. I think it's a tremendous asset, but it won't be when when cars are sitting there for 2 and 3 and 4 minutes, spewing this carbon dioxide on people trying to eat a meal. Hopefully this will all go away soon and we ought to leave it alone. It's working fine the way that it is. It's been working fine for decades. It seems that the system is very flexible. If we didn't have the extra lane now, you couldn't take away the parking that you did to build the outdoor diners. I mean, we all moved here because we loved Hermosa Beach, and it seems that the environmental department and members of this council constantly want to change why we all came here. You should leave it alone. It's working great. Make some minor changes, but don't close Hermosa Avenue between 10 and 14th Street on a single lane. That is a disaster, and it will prove a disaster. And minus that, with the budget of where we've got, why don't we take all this extra money that we're blowing on experiments and pay down our debt instead of wasting $46,000 on this project? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to see if there's anybody else on the call who would like to provide public comment on this item. Now is your opportunity to do so by either raising your hand where you see the box of participants or pressing *6 on your phone.
I just wanted to quickly note, Mayor, the last 2 callers did join us by phone and was the reason why we did put the clock up because they don't have the camera capability.
I noticed that. Thank you. All right, last call for public comment on this item.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, this is Jonathan Wicks calling. Thank you to everyone who is working on this, doing everything we can to do the right thing for the city. Thank you. I would encourage any metrics during this temporary transition to include value per acre measurements and consider tax assessments and what increases to volumes of businesses and increases to commerce in the city we're seeing, not simply measuring the success of this Hermosa and Pier transition by traffic count volumes, but really looking at, are people spending more money in the city, and are these businesses thriving? So would encourage that as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any other public comment for this item? Now is your opportunity to speak. Please raise your hand or press *6 on your phone and just state your name. Okay. Going once. Going twice. All right, I will close public comment on this item, and I will bring it back to the council for more discussion, deliberation, and direction. Starting with Councilmember Fangari.
Madam Mayor, I had just a couple of questions that came up from the discussions and from looking at these plans a little bit more closer. So, Doug, I am looking at the head-in angled parking detail on concept 2. And when I expand it, it looks like the length of that parking is 16 feet. And my question is, do you have concerns about, we have a lot of extended long trucks in the city. Do you have a problem, do you have a concern about an extended truck parking in one of these spots and essentially blocking the one lane that we have, or making it unsafe for that cars going through the one lane that we have? 16 feet, basically an acceptable size that includes extended trucks, or do you anticipate any problems with trucks parking there?
I discussed this with the consultant, and I believe it's close to standard. Again, if someone parks a rather oversized vehicle in there, what can you do about that? That could pose some issues. I can go back to the consultant and look into that a little more closely.
Are we planning to put any signage as to the size of the car that would be allowed to park in these spots?
I would have to get
compact or not, but
right. I have to get back to you on that. We did discuss if they were compact, they would need to be signed. If not, I think the signage is not as necessary. So that will have to be verified.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you for that.
And then do you anticipate that the existing 15-minute parking spots that we currently have, that we would have a similar number based on the layout? I know this is, again, conceptual, it's not that much detail, but I'm looking, for example, at, again, concept 2 and the 2 spots in front of Starbucks. And I believe Starbucks now has two 15-minute or green curb 15-minute parking in front of them. Do you anticipate that these spots would also be 15 minutes, or do we not have that detail yet of where we're going to put 15-minute parking?
We do not have that detail, but I know we would try to maintain things as close to current as we can, especially, as we get feedback from specific businesses that need, that accommodation specifically for them or more so. So
And
we're cognizant.
Councilmember Fangari, in terms of trying to minimize costs or changes that need to be made, one of the things we'll be looking at is, can we alternate? Right now, we have parking meters that have been set into the ground in certain locations. Can we avoid having to move those? And so if you move from a parallel to a diagonal, can you maintain 2 metered spots? And then maybe the third spot that takes up that normal space becomes the 15-minute spot. So trying to maintain the meters in the locations that they're at now while maximizing the number of spaces, we would make use of the 15-minute spots based on where the meters are or aren't.
Perfect. And I think that would also give us another challenge about the signs and the spots. I mean, tell people which meter applies to which spot when the meters are now not exactly where the actual spots are going to be is going to be a challenge for us as well. So, okay, that's all my questions. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Fangari. Other questions or comments at this point from my colleagues? Councilmember Armato.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm interested in hearing from Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember DeToy on their opinions. So I'll offer the floor to them. Otherwise, I'm happy to
Sure.
give my opinion.
I'm happy to kick off where I stand on this, and I'll start by saying, found it interesting that it seems like we have a wide variety of reactions, and it's interesting. I mean, in reflecting on it, I'm thinking this is why this is not just so easy. We have everybody, including us, screaming for moving fast to make some of these really bold ideas come to light. And there's so many considerations each and every time. I was really, after we had some discussion again, as Doug said, it was super last minute and on the fly. He had just received them. I was kind of partial to option one. Glad to hear staff might be thinking that that's a wise choice among these three options. I'm very much in favor of making a bold move that would make a difference for our business community right now. Would at minimum want it to be, if we moved on it, something that we would see through at least through January something. And it occurred to me that this is a lot of trouble. It is some expense that we may even want to consider the possibility of extending it into the spring, if it made sense. And I know that's not a decision that wouldn't need to be made now. And I just wanted to put it out there because it occurred to me that depending upon if we make a move and try one of these concepts and follow it through, it'll be a little bit of an evolving kind of situation. And as the weather is also a factor, I'm sure. We don't know what's going to happen with indoor dining and whether or not there will be some relief there anytime soon. And so I would be recommending option one. I think a bike lane is important. Oh, I know what I wanted to address, Councilmember Armato, because I did some back-end parking on Gerondo. It is different, but it reminds me of that change they made coming from the south on PCH going onto Aviation, and they moved the curb. Caltrans, I'm sure that was their project, move the curb, and everybody lost their mind because they were used to the curb being in one place. I found that I really appreciate backing into a slanted slot so that it is very clear where the traffic is when I'm pulling back into traffic, as opposed to as I park now on Pier Avenue in an angled parking lot. I have pretty extreme difficulty backing up, especially if there's a large car beside me. So, I think it's a little bit of pro and con. I'm heartened by the fact that Beach City's health district is very steeped in this topic and all the related aspects of it. So I feel some sense of growing confidence tonight, hearing them weigh in and seeing their letter of support for option one. I think it would be worthwhile. And the only thing that's really standing in my way is how much diverse opinion we got from some of the major stakeholders. And so I guess what I was going to raise tonight in my comments was whether or not we needed to, if we felt we needed to get some additional, I don't know how many of them really had a chance to seriously weigh in and discuss it in a way that wasn't just reacting so much as really understanding the nature of each of these options. And so that's a question I have for my colleagues or the staff, whether or not we need to take another week or whatever to get that input and make sure these concepts are well understood before we select one. And I'll stop there and see if my colleague, Councilmember DeToy, wants to add in to that.
I think I saw Justin's hand go up, so he can.
Oh, okay.
Madam Mayor, I agree with you. I think Commissioner Grayson stated it perfectly. I think Jacqueline stated it perfectly. This is an opportunity for us to be bold, to test living streets. That is our city policy and that we've been talking about. If you can parallel park, you can reverse angle park. I've ridden and driven up and down Herondo, ridden by it many times. People were upset about it at first because it was a new concept. As soon as they got comfortable with how it works, they had no trouble with it. I see it all the time. That parking is full. I'm not aware of any safety issues with it. I feel safer riding up and down the bike paths because I can make eye contact with drivers in their cars, where you can't do that if people are backing out into the bike lane. And I think for downtown Hermosa, I would want that added visibility after folks have consumed food and drink down in Hermosa. So, I would want them to have that added visibility as they pulled out of the parking spot to head home. Another added benefit to concept one is it puts the bike lane between the roadway, the vehicular traffic, and the business area and the parking, rather than weaving it between the sidewalk and the business area, and then the vehicle parking and the dining decks. And so for what I think is the right move, creating that buffer, it's a much better concept. So I will close simply by saying I support extending it down to 8th Street, not at the expense of slowing down 10th through 14th. I think we ought to move forward as quickly as we can to get this operational so that we can get these businesses generating some revenue. And I'll just finally close by reminding folks that when they rebuilt Harbor Drive as part of the project that included Herondo, they increased foot traffic to all the businesses along Harbor Drive. If you build it, they will come. Let's be bold. Let's test that concept. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Right, and thank you I wanted to echo as well that I would be in support of moving down to at least where 9th would be to capture those additional businesses on Hermosa Avenue, south of Pier Avenue. And appreciate what you just said, that it should not slow down moving forward unless there was some reason that we couldn't move forward without that being considered as well. Does anyone on the staff side want to respond to if they have knowledge about slowing down traffic and exhaust in the space? Leanne, when I was listening to you, I was imagining that as we slow down potentially some traffic on Hermosa, people are going to spread out and take a few other options. So it's not that they will be just sitting there bumper to bumper, with exhaust flying. But is there anything that you would like to add to that concern that was raised?
Mayor Campbell, as I heard that comment and some of the other comments about concern of congestion, I went and pulled up some of our data that we've collected in the past about the volume of traffic on Hermosa Avenue in comparison to the capacity that's built for it. And because Hermosa Avenue within the downtown is signalized at each intersection, at 11th, at Pier, at 13th, and then at 14th. And it really does give priority to the north-south travel flow because there's far fewer vehicles entering from the sides. Each of those intersections, with the exception of Pier and Hermosa Avenue, where you have more cross traffic, operates at a very high level of service where there's virtually no vehicular delay. And so that's something we would certainly be looking for as we conduct traffic counts and as we're building this out, to work towards understanding how does that change over time. But at operating at a level of service of A currently means that there's virtually no delay happening on that street. And the street has the volume. I just pulled up the data. So between 8th Street and 16th Street has an average daily volume of about 11,000 trips, but capacity for 29,000. So that's a pretty quick signal that the street is probably overbuilt for the volume of traffic that is seen in normal times. And so that's one of the things that we'll be paying close attention to. As long as the vehicular travel continues to move forward, I wouldn't expect significant delay or significant backup of vehicles along that. I think Pier Avenue is going to be a slightly different challenge since that is all stop sign based, but something that we'll look at as we design those concepts to get an understanding of.
Right. And there will actually technically be a little bit more space between dining decks and driving cars with this concept because there'll be a bike lane. So, all right, thank you for that. That was a great addition to this conversation. Other comments? Councilmember Decoy, see your hand.
Sure. Just a question, quick follow-up for Leanne. That traffic study was pre-COVID or during COVID or?
All of the data that we have is pre-COVID. So it would be normal operations. We did traffic counts and analysis as part of our general plan. And then of course the Strand and Pier EIR did similar traffic counts in 2017. So both of those are indicating that all of those intersections along Hermosa Avenue operate with very little delay.
Wonderful, thank you. Just kind of going, building off of what the mayor mentioned about a little bit more outreach for the businesses and kind of directed at Doug. Do you think you had adequate responses? I know that you're kind of the point person with emails and phone calls to get the feedback and kind of the education piece of option 1, option 2, option 3, or was it just kind of the information posted on the agenda and via email and just kind of went with it?
I mean, we, you know, from that stakeholder meeting till today, we've been doing outreach. I mean, I definitely didn't hear from everybody, but we heard from a lot of, you know, the kind of the more active, of course, and you know, the key kind of stakeholders. I mean, it's tough to say, you know. I mean, it would have been nice to just have a clean vote, but it didn't go that way because, of course, there's a lot to it. And that's understandable and that's good. I mean, we wanted to see all the nuances. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we got a lot. We could always get more, but at a certain point, you know, you get too much. So I don't, you know, I think we did a decent job in the amount of time we had, for sure.
Absolutely, thank you. I was very hesitant for the reverse end parking. Again, mostly from being a novice, and I don't think I've actually ever parked in one. So you kind of just only support what you know, I guess. I guess I should go down to Hondo and try it out for good measure before I cast any judgment on it. It's just change is always hard, and I think when we look at the stakeholders, especially those immediately affected, they need more space, especially while they can't open up indoors. So I think everyone will be happy with the option to increase to 14 or 17 if that's the will of the council. I think having a protected bike lane going through that area would be good, since we do not have a bike path like Manhattan Beach. I saw some comments regarding that, and we should start exploring that. That's when we are running a tight budget situation, that's probably not the time to be exploring a major project like that. I do have concerns about the cost, especially since implementation is going to be mid-September and tentatively January pickup for 4 months in this fiscal situation. I know that we're seeking reimbursement options. But overall, I feel like this is a good time to experiment, help our businesses out. We've been saying that since the very beginning, that we need to do everything we can for them, and increasing the space, we'll do that. I'm teetering between 1 and 2, but I definitely want to hear what my colleagues also have to say. And maybe I'll turn the camera off and go park on Hondo real quick and come back and give you the judgment. So with that, Madam Mayor, those are kind of my thoughts. Again, also, as I mentioned in the very beginning, support about going down to 8th Street. And I think that's just more of a natural spot. And we do have some restaurants down there that we could help out. So thank you.
Right. I just want to quickly add, I think that, there is some money being spent here, but it has immediate benefit, and we would be having to spend some money to try anything whenever we did so. So at least in this scenario, in this very unusual situation, there's kind of a win-win or win-win-win involved. in doing it. And I think the bottom line is with the choices, I think they're all new. And so I think to some degree, everyone is feeling a little bit of uncertainty about being bold. But I mean, I appreciated, Mayor Pro Tem, your comment about, really, if there was ever a time, it is now to be just that. And I think I saw Councilmember Pangary's hand up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to put in my thoughts. I came into the meeting with the idea that option 2 would be the ideal option. I like the way it's laid out with the bike lane being a little safer, I think, than option 1. And just like Mike said, I have not used those reverse parking spots before, so I feel if we're changing things, we probably don't want to change too many things and create a little bit of confusion for our residents and visitors. So option 2 would be my preferred option, but I'm hearing a lot of support for option 1 and trying things out, and I would not be opposed to option 1 either. I think either one of them facilitates what our businesses would like. Again, I came in with thinking option 2 would be best, but if the majority of the council supports option 1, I will support that as well. I'm also in support of having that started with 8th Street, and I agree with Justin that I don't want to slow anything down of what's happening now, but we definitely need to evaluate going to 8th Street, and maybe Doug and Leanne, that will be part of the conversation that we have when you come back with Pier Avenue plans or ideas, and we can talk about that at the next meeting. But for the existing plan, I would go with option 2 or option 1, with the future looking into starting it from 8th Street instead of 10th Street. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes, thank you. And Councilmember Pangary, I can add that my recollection of our Economic Development Committee was there was some pretty immediate negative feedback to option 2 for some of those reasons. And again, that doesn't mean we heard from 100% of everyone. I don't know if that is, kind of helps you calibrate your thoughts on that one. But
Thank you.
Yeah. Other thoughts? Yes, Councilmember Armato.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had first a quick question on the meters. How are those going to be situated or installed on a temporary basis, or is there a way to work in existing meters with the new configuration?
Would depend on the concept that we move forward with, but the idea that we're looking at is to try and maximize the meters in the spaces that are already there. So, we have, most of our meters are double pole meters. So if you actually line it up, the angle starts at that same space. You would have two spaces side by side that would use the meters as they exist today. As I mentioned, I think in maybe one of my earlier comments, for those spaces where there's not currently a meter because it's either already a 15-minute zone or we're essentially creating a new space because they're now angled rather than parallel, those would be the spots that we would look towards making the 15-minute zone. So trying to mix it all in and minimize the amount of work that would need to be done to remove or rearrange meter posts.
Terrific. I knew you had given it some thought, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. And then one more question for maybe our city manager. If we collectively want to extend this to 8th Street, which, in speaking earlier with Councilmember DeToy, makes sense with it being a safe route to school and have it be contiguous into our downtown. Would we be able to provide direction tonight to just direct staff to continue the design concept to 8th Street without slowing down the implementation of the Hermosa Avenue installation?
Thank you, Councilmember Armato. Absolutely. You can, if that is the will of the council, to extend it to 8th Street, which from a staff perspective, I think we would recommend that as well, 8th Street being our safe routes to school. The cost, our rough estimate is additional $10,000 to $15,000, and I don't anticipate that it would slow down progress of this current effort. And when we think about the businesses that might be impacted, there may be 5 or 6 on the east side and potentially 1 on the west side. And that's just looking at businesses that are there today. And as you know, that there may be more that come online And fundamentally, the goals behind this aren't solely for the expansion of business, but also to allow for other uses. But primarily during this time, it would help out businesses.
Perfect. Thanks for that clarification. And touching on one point on whether or not this would back up traffic, we'd spoken about this in a previous meeting, but it's one lane in each direction in downtown Manhattan Beach and also on Catalina, in Redondo, downtown Manhattan Beach, on Manhattan Avenue, on Highland, on Manhattan Beach Boulevard. So, there's an occasional backup of a few cars, but certainly not the miles that were depicted earlier in public comment. So I would suspect that we would have a similar experience in our downtown as well. I will say that, we certainly got a decent amount of public input on this prior to the meeting, phone calls and emails on this. And needless to say, it was all over the map. So I almost believe that we can't go wrong because of that. I expressed earlier my displeasure with reverse angle parking, but I'm not going to let that get in the way of making progress here for our businesses and our downtown. I guess I just need to work on my parallel parking and reverse angle parking, and I will commit to doing that. I also am heartened by the fact that this is temporary and that we could change it if we want to in January, if we want to change the style of parking. If that does not work for our community, we can in fact change it. I think concept one certainly has the least amount of negatives and the most positives. It is the most safe for cars and bikes. I like that it's supported by Beach City's Health District. I appreciate that they weighed in on this. I like the dedicated bike lane as well. I think that is just much safer for our bike riders. And I would support a design extension to 8th Street, especially considering it's a $10,000 or $15,000 investment that would have benefits to many more businesses. So those are my thoughts, Madam Mayor.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
Are we ready to make a motion? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Massey.
Madam Mayor, I am ready to make a motion. I just wanted to query my colleagues whether or not we want to consider and get staff input on whether or not we want to extend the time that this will be in place for 6 months to make sure that we can collect enough data to measure whether it works and, recoup the amount of money that we've spent on it and give businesses the kind of breathing room they need to invest in it. So I put that to all of you, but otherwise I'm ready to make a motion.
I'll quickly weigh in, unless staff has a reason that I'm not thinking about. I think that would strengthen this move, actually. And we're, as far as managing the traffic, and there's pros and cons to this, but right now there's just less traffic because we're in a pandemic, because all our events have been canceled. And so if there's an opportunity to kind of ease in and play with this opportunity, I think that's a plus. So I could support that. Yes, Councilmember Fangari.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think for supporting our businesses, that is a good idea to extend it so that they have, more time to plan and do their numbers to see if it, whatever they're planning to invest would pay back. The concern that I have, as we all know, is that the issues regarding the COVID-19 change every day or every week or every month. I have a comfort level as we sit here today that we're probably going to be in this position for the rest of this year. But I'm not comfortable, or at least I'm hopeful that it's not going to be like this for the next 6 months. And because Hermosa Avenue is a street that all the buses go through, or not all of them, but a lot of the buses go through, keeping that Hermosa Avenue to be one lane and especially if we extend it to 8th Street, so that will be a little bit more blocks, keeping it for one lane for 6 months. If everything goes back to semi-normal by early next year, I'm just really not sure. I mean, I'm gonna go along if the council wants to extend it. My initial, response to Justin's question is a question mark. I really don't know that we have the data to commit to that change for 6 months. Because if the traffic is back to semi-normal by January, or between the cars that drive on Hermosa Avenue and the buses that are going to continue to go on there, is that going to create a significant traffic, especially in the morning, obviously traffic times in the morning and in the afternoon and the return back. So I'm reluctant to jump in for 6 months, but I'm happy to hear what the rest of the council thoughts are.
I'll just quickly say it might be, to counter that a little bit. I appreciate the points you're making, Councilmember Fangary, concerns. It's also the slow time of year after January for our businesses. And so I do think that in the psychology of this, there's a lot of concern for, pivoting to the bold models and then having so much uncertainty about how far their investment will go. So, it's just another way to look at it. It might help them through a time when they normally would be after the holidays, et cetera, where they would be hoping for some draw to their businesses. Councilmember Armato.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support 6 months. That's totally fine. This is because of COVID-19, and we're trying to accommodate and help our businesses and community during this time. But this is also viewed as an experiment. We're going to take a close look at it. And if this works, and speaking for myself, this could be something that is much more long-term. And I'm sure that that's, again, if it works, of interest to our businesses as well, and, our community. So yes, 6 months is fine.
All right, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to make a motion. So let me see if I can formulate one. I move that we direct staff to move forward to finalize and implement concept 1 for a period upon implementation no less than 6 months to facilitate foot traffic, bicycle travel, and outdoor dining options within the public right-of-way along Hermosa Avenue between 10th and 14th Streets. That we direct staff to move forward with design and implementation of the exact same concept extended south from 10th Street to 8th Street. That we direct staff to appropriate $46,000 in capital improvement funds to fund implementation of lane reconfiguration and associated work on Hermosa Avenue between 10th and 14th Streets, including traffic counts pre and post implementation. And that we authorize the city manager to issue an executive order directing the reconfiguration and determine the project is categorically exempt under CEQA.
Very good.
I'll second that. Want to ask a clarifying question, Madam Mayor and Mr. City Attorney, Madam City Manager. What do we need to add any language to authorize an additional expenditure to take the design and implementation down to 8th Street? Or can you bring that back as a consent item after the fact?
I believe you can go ahead and authorize us to do that with this item, just to expand it to the additional up to 8th Street, and then authorize me to expend the amount needed for that. We don't have the exact amount, but we have an estimate.
And the estimate again was 15,000?
Possibly 10 to 15.
I am amenable to that modification to the motion, Madam Mayor, so that it would add authority to staff to appropriate an additional 15,000 in capital improvement funds for the design and implementation of the same changes between 10th and 8th Street.
8th Street. Very good.
And I'll accept that. Thank you.
Okay.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
On the 6 month time frame, Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor Pro Tem Massey, is it 6 months from the January 13th date? What is the time frame for the 6 months in your motion?
Thank you, Madam City Manager. It was 6 months from full implementation of the changes. So
Like-
once we have signed off that the project is complete and in place and our businesses can use it, 6 months from that point in time was the motion. If that's a concern for staff, I'm certainly willing to listen.
I don't know that that's necessarily a concern. I think when it initially came up, so we've aligned our expectation for this effort with what you've directed us to do with the outdoor dining, so that we were able to give some certainty for those businesses. And that's, I believe Leanne had mentioned that that was the January 13th date. And so I just wanted to be sure that if the 6 months takes us beyond that, that's what your intent was, or did you intend for us to have it available for 6 months beyond that time frame?
That it is my intent, as I explained, to start the clock from the time when this project is complete and can be utilized by businesses. And you raise a good point about potentially conflicting timelines. My intent would be that staff would bring back a conforming agenda item so that we sync up whatever timelines apply to our other outdoor dining and outdoor business provisions with this.
Thank you. That works.
Perfect. Okay, any other comments before we vote? All right, let's call the vote.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Armato,
Aye.
Councilmember DeToy,
Aye.
Councilmember Fangari,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Massey,
Aye.
and Mayor Campbell.
Aye.
Item passes by unanimous consent.
Yay. Thank you, everyone. All right, and we move on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That takes us to item 6D. Adopt the resolution preliminarily approving engineer's report and directing related actions for the proposed Greenwich Village North Underground Utilities Assessment District. And Public Works Director Marnell Gibson will be providing this report.
Hello, good evening. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound good.
All right, good. So thank you for having this item on the agenda this evening. This is a series of the next steps needed in order to establish a utility undergrounding district. We have, to this point, received commitment from a group of the proponents for the area that we are calling Greenwich Village North. And that area spans from 27th Street to north of 34th Street along Hermosa Avenue. So this process is a methodology that occurs when a neighborhood area wishes to underground our utility lines. And it is a cost neutral process. The special district or the special assessment, the costs are borne by those property owners who are receiving the special benefit. It does require staff resources, and we are the facilitator in this effort. It should also be noted that the primary lead in the actual activity of the design as well as the construction is Southern California Edison. And then along with them are included Frontier as well as Crown Castle. So the items that are here before you tonight is to take the next steps in order to move towards trying to establish an assessment district. The utility district, or the district, would include 99 parcels. And in your packet is an attachment for a boundary map that further defines those properties that would receive the special benefit. We have in past actions hired an assessment engineer, and Jeff Cooper is on the line this evening to assist with answering any questions. Jeff has produced a preliminary engineer's report, and the primary pieces of information within that report are the cost estimates and then the assessor's role. So that would be the formula that he has developed to determine the special benefit and affiliated costs for each parcel within the district boundaries. Additionally, we have a ballot measure or ballot item that is included. There's a sample ballot in the package. And there is also a more detailed informational letter to each of the property owners that would receive that detail of what the next steps are and what would be involved and what commitment they are moving forward with as it is affiliated to the benefit and the cost for that benefit with that property. So this evening, the primary actions that we are requesting that you approve are to adopt a resolution to approve the preliminary engineer's report. And that will be finalized in the next step of the process if this moves forward. And then the primary action would be to set a public hearing date. We are required to have a minimum of 45 days. So we've set it to October 13th, 2020 at that council meeting to coordinate a ballot opening and a tallying of the votes. And if it is determined at that time by that tally that the majority of the weighted ballots are a yes vote, then the council will have the ability to establish the district moving forward. And there will be a number of steps involved in that process. Additionally, we will be mailing out all of the notices along with the ballot if the council so approves this evening. We will have the city clerk working with our assessment engineer to tabulate and record and make a determination on the outcome of the vote. And then we also need to record the boundary map with the county recorder. So there are still a number of steps to work through. And it was an interesting process to try and figure out how to do a ballot opening with COVID. But I think we have landed there. And so this next step, I think you've received additional written support from the primary people involved with this and who have been moving this forward. To continue to move it forward, even though we are in some unusual times at this point. But they have also demonstrated a continued commitment. One of the requirements that we have, or that actually Southern California Edison, along with Frontier and Crown Council have, are to pay upfront for the design costs. And the group has committed to and noted that they are aware of that cost estimate. So the amount that the upfront design portion is $185,000, and they have acknowledged that amount. So that would be our next step if we move this forward, and then an agreement would come forward at the hearing, at the time of the hearing. None of this costs anything until the district is actually formed. They're not obligated to move forward with this commitment for their properties until a district is actually approved, voted in favor of, and then formed. So they have paid for the fees to date, and they're well aware of the cost moving forward. And with that, if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Wow, what an undertaking. Are there any questions for Marnell or Jeff? Not for the faint of heart, these kinds of projects. I can imagine. I see no questions from my colleagues, so I'm going to go ahead and see if we have any public comment this evening on this item. Do we have any? Yeah, we do have a hand going up.
Yes, we do. We have Jim Anderson, who has signed up, Mayor. So I'm going to go ahead and switch him over to panelist so he can have the option to turn on his camera if he'd like. Jim, if you are there, you should be good to go.
Aha, I don't know if you can see me.
We can hear you, Jim, but we can't see you.
Another button, I guess. There we are.
It looks like a little camera.
I'm fond of Catalina as well, so tried that background. Anyway, I just very quickly wanted to thank everyone for the opportunity to have this on the agenda tonight. I'm representing the Greenwich Village Underground Association, which was established several years ago because we've been working on this for about 6 years to try to move it forward with a host of challenges that are culminating right now at this vote.